Wes Tabor, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So let's start at the beginning. Where did all this start with law enforcement for you? Were there family members in law enforcement? What was kind of your influences to get into law enforcement?
Sure. History of me getting to law enforcement goes back when I was like, 12, 13 years old. I was living in Minnesota. And at the time, it was the 70s, right? 70s and beginning of the 80s. BJ and the Bear, Any Which Way But Loose, all the truck driving shows, right?
Oh yeah.
With the orangutans and chimpanzees and all this,
Yeah.
and convoy and all. I want to be a truck driver, right?
Okay.
So I was all about it, and everything was about the conventional and cab over trucks. Back then they had the flat trucks, and I was just drawing them all. I was fascinated with being a truck driver. And then what happened was, as I was getting into my early teens, 12, 13 years old, I was trying to get involved in some sports. I went to the Boy Scouts. And I was met with like the cold shoulder everywhere I went.
Hmm.
Literally. Yeah. Because my family, we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have the flashy cars and nice clothes and all this stuff. And it was my first little kind of dip into the water of, society, right? And everyone
Okay.
starts judging and looking at you and things like this, right? So for me, Clark,
Clark.
so for
Clark was.
me, I was like, I was trying to find something I could fit in with, right? And that I could kind of do. And so what happened was after I tried to go to the Boy Scouts, I had showed up and this one father, he just didn't like me, and he was just kind of like pushing me out the door. It was very strange.
That's
I don't know
very
what.
odd. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other parents were very nice, but they were, I didn't have, unfortunately, and this we'll talk about this. My father really wasn't in my life that much. Vietnam guy,
Mm.
couple tours, door gunner, crew chief, a lot of action, a lot of trauma, a lot of PTSD. He come back, he got a divorce, separated from the family, still worked for the government, still did military stuff, didn't really become the father he should have been, right? So I had
Right.
a stepfather that came to my life who was a felon, hardcore felon. He had been in prison, he had escaped from prison, he had been captured.
Wow.
Oh yeah, robbery, burglary, you name it. Alcoholic at the age of 15, all that stuff. But when he
Oof.
went to jail in 1975 or 73, whatever it was, he told me later, after he'd married my mother and he was clean as a whistle.
Yeah.
From that point on, when he came out of jail from this burglary charge, he got 5 years. And he told me when they shut that gate, he had an epiphany of like, what am I doing with my life? I know I'm in prison.
Yeah.
And he described it, how they're killing people in prison. It was a fight for your life every day, all this stuff. And he said, that's it. When I get out, I'm never going to drink again. I'm never going to burglarize or pillage again. I'm going to get a job and I'm going to get a family. I'm going to, be a good citizen the rest of my life. And he did. So when he got out, married my mom, he was like my role model at that point. Now he
Yeah.
was a very rough and tough, almost abusive with us as kids, disciplinary wise. But you would say today he'd be in jail, right? Like with the stick smacking you and all that stuff.
Right.
He definitely locked up. Back then, it was kind of like almost normal, you
Ah,
know.
yes, it was. I do know.
But but he was kind of a tortured guy. He really was because he just grew up in a really bad environment, no father again, and but he chose his path. He paid his dues. He came out and he said, "I'm going to be straight," and that's what he gave to me: work ethic, and hey, don't screw up your life. Do the right thing. You got to work hard. You got to earn what you're going to do. Don't lie. Don't cheat. Don't steal. Right. So he was pounding that into me. So as I was going through some of these stages where I'm like trying to find clubs or sports or something that, I can get involved in, and I was getting turned away in a sense, kind of just cold shoulder. I met this kid and he goes, "Hey, you should come to our Explorer meeting."
Ah, okay.
So what's an Explorer? He said, "Oh, we're like miniature cops. We're like the little cops, the kid cops that ride with the troopers." I said, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, it's great. We have a uniform and everything." I was like, "I want to check this out." So, Minnesota State Police, my friend takes me. I walk in the door. All these troopers are there, and they came right over. "Hey, man, how you doing, brother? You want to be a cop? Come on in. We're gonna teach you how to do it." What's your name? Boom, boom, boom. And these guys were all buttoned up, old school troopers from Minnesota,
Probably
you
the
know,
campaign
the,
covers,
the
the super
campaign covered the
squared
whole
away
thing. They weren't wearing them,
uniforms.
but they were there, and they'd
Yeah.
go out and put them on and show us the trooper cards and all the equipment. And but the heart of the story is how nice they were and accepting. They didn't care how I looked. They didn't care I didn't have designer clothes. They didn't care about my shoes. They just saw a kid who wanted to be a cop and like, come on in, man, we're gonna take care of you. And I was like, wow. And from that moment on, I said, I'm gonna be just like these guys. So I started doing all the ride-alongs. I became super involved. I would never miss a meeting. And I'm like, this is going to be what I want to do. Right. So fast forward, we actually moved to Maine. I graduated from school in northern Maine up near Canada. My yearbook says I want to be great as Elliot Ness. I actually put that at the time, the movie was out and all that, the Untouchables and all that. The remake, the 80s remake in 1988, I graduated from high school. And little did I know that, Elliot Ness actually died, broke, alcoholic, destroyed himself at the end, right? Powerful lesson to learn. It's
Yes.
why I don't even drink today. I don't even smoke cigars. I'm healthy. I do all these different things, which a lot of people are like, that's a little crazy, but I'm like, well, it's just one of the things with my history with my real father and his alcoholism, all these
Sure.
things.
Absolutely.
You know what? I don't want to go down this path. I don't want to even look at it. So I made those decisions. But so when I graduate from high school, I go to Florida because I had met a blonde-haired girl down there. Of course, Florida beaches, blonde hair, right? And I said, I'm going to go to Florida
And
because
it's
I'm in
warm there.
Florida.
Minnesota's cold and Maine.
Yeah, I'm freezing. And I'm like looking
Yep.
around at all the trees, which is beautiful, right? But I'm like, I'm 18. I have a chance, beaches,
Oh,
bikinis.
oh, all
Where
day
they come on.
long.
I'm going to Florida. It's nice and warm. So I go to Florida and I start working like at a gas station and digging ditches for cable and all this stuff. And I'm like, I need to figure out what I'm going to do. And am I going to be a policeman? So I go to Inverness, Florida, which they have an academy there. And at that time, you could sponsor yourself. You don't have to get hired by a police department. You can go to get your certification. And then when you get out, go look for a job and say, hey, here's my cert, hire me.
Hmm.
So I talked to the people at the Vocational Technical Institute, which is now it's called something else. Can't remember. This is in Inverness, Florida, which is in the middle of nowhere, north of Tampa, probably about a good 2 hours.
Okay.
So I go down and they say, yeah, the first 50 people in line get in. That's it. Yes.
Okay.
1988, right? So show up, have your driver's license and a birth certificate, and I can't remember, $50 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
$150 was a total. You pay 50 at first, 50 in the middle, 50, so whatever it was. It was more than that, but you get the gist of it. So I was like, great. So on that date, I show up at 3 a.m. and I'm like 15th or 13th or whatever in line. I'm like, hey, I made it. I'm gonna get in. So I wait in line and I do all my stuff. And next thing you know, like, all right, you're matriculated, you're going into class and you're gonna, be in the police academy. Great. Okay. So I show up, I'm going to the police academy and set the tone for you. There's 50 people in the class. We get guys that are in their 60s, kids like me who are 18, and in Florida, you have to be 19 to be a police officer. That later on, the director, his name was Kern, he actually was like, how old are you? And I was like, I turned 19 in March, right before June, before graduation. I'll be 19. And he was like, oh, Jesus, I didn't know you're not 19. He said, okay, keep your mouth shut, which I did, and I ended up graduating. But
Sure.
getting back to when we were in the original class, so we're sitting in class. It's a whole hodgepodge of different types of people, right? And I see this guy in the back row with me. He has a girl with him, and she's taking notes for him and whispering in his ear the whole, right? And I'm like, who's this chick? So after a couple weeks, she's gone, he's gone. I'm like, hey, what happened to Sam Jones or whatever? They're like, oh, dude, he couldn't read and write. That was his
Oh.
girlfriend. She was taking notes for him.
Oh my
She was
God.
taking notes for him and
Oh,
reading it to him so he could understand what was going on.
that's like a college football player. Not to, yeah.
Dude, I'm like, you're kidding me. And remember, my grades in high school were abysmal. I mean,
Oh,
and when I
me
say
too.
I was like a D minus. By today's standards, I wouldn't have graduated because I think you have to have a C, like to graduate
Yeah.
by law or something. At the time, they didn't have that. I graduated 48 out of 50. I'm just miserable, miserable
See,
grades.
I'm gonna stop you because I did the same exact thing. I was living in Madison, Wisconsin, and MATC, the vocational school, the tech college, had the same thing. You could sponsor yourself to get through. I had to go through the whole rigmarole like I was joining a police department. They did a
Yeah.
mini background check on me. Then I go before an oral board,
Wow.
and they're like, they're asking me all these questions, and they're like, would you discriminate against anyone? Would you do this? Would you do that? Is there any group of people that, you don't like? And at the time, I was working at an IHOP that was
Mm,
24 hours,
yeah.
and we had homeless people come in all the time. They would just want to drink coffee all night long. They smelled really bad. They didn't tip my waitresses at all,
Uh,
and they cost me money. And a lot, we also had a outpatient mental health clinic a block away.
so
So,
they were coming in there to drink
oh,
coffee.
absolutely. And I remember my interview. I just got done working
Uh,
literally 16 hours at IHOP, and I was like in two fights that night, and I was beat up, I was done. And they're like, well, is there anyone, any group in particular? I'm like, yeah, homeless people. I effing hate them. So they look at me and say, hey, thanks for showing up, and it's like, okay, I can see where
any
this is
type of people,
going.
yeah, homeless people.
Yeah, bye. There's the door, Mr. O'Donnell. Yeah,
Oh
don't
my
come
God.
back, so so I told the truth. I was always like, tell the truth. And I'm like,
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So I find that very interesting because the selection process was so difficult.
Yeah.
And like you said, you had to sponsor yourself. It was 6 months. And they're like, we don't want you to have outside employment. You should be laser focused on this.
How you gonna afford that?
I would just have to live on ramen noodles and mac and cheese. I
Uh,
mean, I've been
uh,
poor,
it-
before, so
that's crazy.
yeah. And
Ours was,
people were lined up to do it though. Back then, now,
yeah,
this
you're right.
same technical college there's some in Milwaukee area as well, in Waukesha, you know, I would venture to guess pretty close to 100% of the people that go in there have been hired by a police agency. And
Yeah,
they're paying them a regular salary to go through said academy. Things are
yeah,
completely different now.
100%,
Wow.
100%.
That is
Yeah,
that's
but
hilarious. You had somebody taking notes. I love it. That's hilarious.
not believe it. I was like, even me as an 18-year-old kid, I'm like, that's just, come on, dude. Can't read or write? How you gonna? Oh, come on. I mean, listen, to be a police officer, you don't have to be, the award-winning writer. You don't
Right,
have
you
to
don't
be,
need to be a Rhodes Scholar, right?
yeah, but you gotta be able to read and write at a decent level to write a report and
Yes.
comprehend and so forth. I mean, come on, things have now. Listen, everyone has degrees and everyone
Oh,
has it's just a different world.
it is. And I'm glad, that I think that's a good thing. A little education, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing.
Yeah. So
So,
yeah, so I graduated from there. It
okay.
was great. We had great instructors, all the local sheriff deputy guys, PD guys, our range guys were all Vietnam vets, hardcore, use the bodies as shields and all this crazy tactics that you could never do today. Obviously,
Right.
some rights violations, right? Handcuff them, grab them around the neck, and walk through the house with them. That they were teaching us this stuff.
That's
You know,
awesome.
so here I have illiterate candidates, and then I have, civil rights violating instructor. I mean, it's craziness. And at the time, I had no clue. I'm like, yeah, let's practice. I mean, I didn't know. And then you go
Sure.
through all these things. Different world, 1988. Graduate, couldn't get a job. Right. I was 19 years old. I turned 19 just before I graduated. No one's gonna hire me. And I'm showing up like in parachute pants. To, I'm a 19-year-old kid trying to get a job. I remember I went to a bunch of places and you walk in the door and you just say, hey, listen, I'm just inquiring about a job. I'm certified. And they're like, yeah, okay, get lost, kid. One captain from Kissimmee near Orlando. Back then, it was like the police department was in a trailer. It was tiny. I mean, it was puny. Now it's massive.
Right.
Kissimmee. And he calls me in. Come on in, kid. Have a seat. So you certified? Yes, yes, sir. Had my silver parachute pants on, t-shirt or something. I don't know. Who was that? Uh, what was that singer back in the day?
Vanilla Ice.
Yeah, it was like Vanilla Ice,
Yeah,
That's
okay.
the hair was almost the whole thing. So he's like, listen, kid, you got to get a little age on you, and you got to like get a little experience, and you got to get some kind of education. You get a high school degree, but maybe get a 2-year degree, get a little age, go to school. Guy helped me out. Guy was solid. He's a
Yeah.
captain. You have to do that. I was very disappointed at the time. Now I realize how nice it was for him to actually go and tell me this stuff, right? So I said, okay. So I go back, I get a job. I was working like spraying bugs at a local like exterminator. I'm
Yeah.
out there spraying lawns and bugs and all this stuff. I became like a cockroach expert, a cricket expert, and oh, that's sedgeweed and dollarweed. I could spray that too. I was doing everything, right? And so then I said, let me go and get a two-year degree. Well, I go in and they're like, dude, your grades are horrendous. You're not prepared. You can't even take the basic tests. You got to go take all these courses, remedial, to get to the college level courses. So I had to
Wow.
take like six a semester. I squeezed them all in, and I said, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna actually, for once in my life, now because it's important, and I realize how important it is, I'm gonna focus on actually getting it done. And I did. I mean, I was rocking and rolling, studying every night. I had never studied. And I'm
Right.
literally studying, like writing it out, studying, mapping it, outlining over and over and over every day, but I'm getting great grades. I'm doing everything. So, and they paid for it, Pell Grant, because I had no money. I was broke. I was 19 years old and crappy jobs and no money. But the Pell Grant actually paid for my 2 degree and actually helped me eat because you can use money for living expenses and
Sure.
gas and food and travel and all that. So it was a great thing. So I get my 2-year degree in, and at that point, then I'm getting married, right? So now I'm like 20 years old, gonna get married. That was maybe not the smartest move at the time. I
That's
mean,
the practice wife.
but yeah, it was yeah, right. So I get married and I'm like, I've got to get a job. And then, maybe a year later, someone's pregnant. I'm like, oh boy, now I really need a job,
Oh yeah.
right? So I remember we were finishing up the 2 degree and all that stuff, and she was as well. And I think he was a captain at the time, might have been a lieutenant from the sheriff's office where I lived, Hernando County. He was speaking in front of the class, talking about the sheriff's office. So she said, you should come because she knew I want to be a cop. And, even though I'm spraying roaches and dollar weed, she's like, come check this guy out. He's going to talk. I was like, cool. So he gives the speech, does the whole thing. And she's like 4 months pregnant or 5 months. And she's got a little bump and all that stuff. After he gets done, she walks up and she goes like this, come here, come here, come here. So I walk up and she's talking to him. And then I come walking into the scene. He's kind of looking at me like, take it easy, kid. I'm busy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she goes, oh, no, this is my husband. And his face was like, like 2 kids. We're just kids, right?
Yep.
And looking at her pregnant, and he's certified to be a law enforcement officer, but he needs a job. And he kind of hung his head. He goes, here's my card. Call me. We'll have you fill out an application. And I got hired like 8 months later, 7, 8 months
Wow.
later. Yeah. So that guy, he looked at me. He's like, let's give this kid a shot, right? So I was 21 years old by the time I got hired. So now we're into, 92, 91, 92. And I
Mm.
became sheriff deputy up there. And, sheriffs in Florida, they're the bomb. They control everything in law enforcement for the counties. You have PDs and such like that, but it's a different animal. The sheriff is the highest authority of law enforcement officer in each county, period. I mean, legislatively, they have power, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, that's how it is in Florida. Other states, you have state police, or you in Massachusetts, or you might have, even like NYPD, these big LAPD, all the,
Sure.
they're like the ones doing everything. Sheriffs were running the gamut in Florida. So I was thrilled to be a sheriff deputy at
How
21
big of
years.
a department was it?
At that time, I think maybe 200 guys,
Oh,
something
okay.
like that. And, another 70 or
Did you have
whatever.
to start in the jail?
I did not.
Oh,
It was
nice.
run by Corrections Corporation of America, and I did
Wow.
not have to do that. And I was
Lucky
so,
you.
so happy. They have escapes every couple of months. But on the minimum security side, guys
Okay,
were.
sure.
But it gave me an opportunity to meet with, some of the state corrections people. And by law in Florida, they have to have bloodhounds. By law, it's actually written in the law. They have to
Really?
have bloodhounds. So I'm out there with bloodhounds chasing these fugitives with these guys sometimes. Oh, it was great. We had the Belgian Malinois or we had a German Shepherd, and they brought out woo, 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 the big ears.
Yes.
Those things were awesome. It was great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So now the sheriff's office is much bigger. I don't know how many guys, 500 and something or whatever they have.
Okay.
And then another couple hundred in the jail or whatever. It's not a small department. It's more of a medium. It's not a Hillsborough County. It's not Orange County, but Hernando is pretty good size, and it's used to be a little sleepy suburb, but then they put that Suncoast highway through all the way to Citrus County. So all of those counties now feed into Tampa, and
Mhm.
it's boom, everything's it's off the charts.
So,
So
how long were you with that sheriff's department?
I was there, just over 5 years.
Okay, what was your career
Over five
progression
years.
while you were there?
So it was I started in patrol, of course. I was just a kid. And I did maybe a year and a half, 2 years in that. And then I started getting called on to do a bunch of surveillance and stuff like that. And I turned into street crimes. Then that turned into SWAT. And I was a big martial artist at the time and all that stuff. So I started doing like stuff for the SWAT team as far as DTAC and all that. Showing when we had our training sessions and all that, doing all the defensive tactics and all those things. It was a really good shot. Just it was, it was at the time, it was like 25 now, 24, 25,
Yeah.
26 years old. And I'm like, you know what? I mean, I'm in the best shape of my life, right? And it was great. Call outs. We were a part-time SWAT team. We weren't a full-time SWAT team, but I got to go to the FBI SWAT school, 2 week school in Cape Canaveral. Um, uh, they taught us a lot of great stuff. It was really, really challenging. Some of the physical coursework we were doing was crazy. 15-mile force march, obstacle course, under tunnels and gas. I mean, they didn't hold back. It was a really good school. I don't even know if they do it anymore. Do you know if they still do the FBI SWAT school in Cape
You know
Canaveral?
what? I have not heard. There's an FBI leadership college
Mm,
that's the only FBI school that I know of. You know, if you're a lieutenant and they're looking to promote you to captain, where I worked, they would send you to FBI college to the
okay.
academy.
Okay.
And that was more like
Is
leadership
that at
stuff.
Quantico?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that was in Quantico. And, then you knew it's like, unless you really screw up somehow or you really piss off the chief
Yeah.
somehow, then, you're getting promoted. That was their way of like molding you. And it's like, oh, look, and now they're going more local. They're going down to Northwestern in Chicago
Okay.
because, it costs money to
Oh,
send somebody
yeah.
that far out. It costs a lot of money
Yeah.
actually. So
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I'm thinking about your SWAT stuff. This would be the early 90s.
Yeah. We're talking
What
like
kind of equipment did you have? I'm just curious.
94, 95. So we didn't even have 40 mil. It was like all of our stuff was like 37 mil. It was like leftover Vietnam era stuff. It was like, it wasn't even
Well, what was
uniform.
your sidearm?
It was, oh, we used Glock. So I started with
Oh,
like J-frame 38s, right? And then
right.
we went to Glock and then stayed at Glock my whole career. I mean, a couple times in my career, like I carried H&K or I was
Okay.
never a SIG guy, even though SIG's an excellent gun, great,
Oh
beautiful
yeah.
weapon, except for the 320.
See, we
I
had
don't even want to
320s. I
go
mean, not
there.
to go off on a tangent, but holy catfish, Batman. It's like I love that. I
Never
started
had
out
issue.
with Glocks. They were brand new when I was in the academy.
Yeah.
So if you're a recruit,
What
you get
year
all
was
new
this?
stuff. You get the newest. They were 40
No, what
caliber,
year were you in the academy?
95.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So we got Glock 40 cals, and the street coppers had Ruger 357s, the wheel guns, but they were only allowed to have 38 bullets.
Yeah. Plus
Yeah,
speed.
38 caliber. Yeah, plus piece.
Yeah.
And the whole department, went to Glock, and then actually one of my friends was in a firefight. He got shot like 4 or 5 times by a 9-time felon, but that's a story for another day. You just shake your head like, how is this piece of garbage out on the street? But
Oh, I got
whatever.
one.
But his Glock jammed.
Yeah.
And Glocks are like, indestructible. This was not a first generation Glock, it was a later generation Glock. And the chief
Why
was
did
like,
it jam, do you think? Maybe he didn't have his wrist locked when he got hit.
I
And
who knows, but the chief is like, we're done with that. We're going to Smith and Wesson M&Ps.
they're so freaking heavy.
They are. So we did the Smith and Wesson M&P 40 cals. Then we got
Ah.
a new chief, and he's like, I really like these SIGs P320s.
Mhm.
And we went to 9 millimeter. 9 millimeter changed. There wasn't a whole lot of difference between a 9 millimeter and a 40 cal.
Yeah,
And
a
I
little
would
bit. Yeah,
I was shooting groups like you would not believe. I was like night and day because we had New York triggers on the Glocks. I was
yeah.
used to a real heavy trigger pull. This thing was light as a feather. And
5, 6 pound pulls or
oh
something.
yeah. And I'm like, this is the best gun I've ever had. And I retired with the SIG. And I'm like, could I buy
Yeah.
this? And they wouldn't let me buy it because they were
See,
still
that's
pretty
come
new.
on. That's ridiculous.
I know. But, looking back, well, at least it's not going off on my nightstand by itself or anything like that. So, I don't think Clark the Wonder Dog or my wife would really appreciate that. So,
Well, we had the 9 millimeter. It was the first gen Glock, and
okay.
then we had a chase, a shootout, and I was a couple cars behind. It was actually one of the first dash cam shootout chases.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I'll try to find it and send it to you.
Yeah.
Spring Hill Chase, whatever. It was a Camaro. So this guy was despondent in his house. We went. I went there with another guy. I'm brand new, 6 months on the job.
Oh, my gosh.
And we go to the front, nothing in the front. We go to the back. We're looking in windows. It's a guy's
Yeah.
it's a welfare check, right? So we look in the back, and I see the guy in the back. He's like, "Oh shit!" And he kind of steps back off of the bushes, and he fucking starts running. And I'm like, "What the hell?" And he grabs his gun, and I was like, "Of course, what am I getting?" I grab my gun. I'm like, He's got a gun. He's got a gun. He's putting it into his head. So he saw the deputy, and then he did one of these deals. So now
Yeah.
we got a guy in the house, despondent. Welfare check turns into a suicide attempt, which I found out is like, how many calls do you go to in a week? One of those things, right? I
Right.
mean, it's frequently, it's not like every day or every other day, but you're going to those calls all the freaking time. Attempted suicide, suicides, domestic,
Right. Right.
all these violent calls, just constantly going to. This was really my first. It wasn't my first one. I actually had a, a woman made a pin cushion of her husband like 38 times. Of death killed him. I get there, almost shoot her because we're in the kitchen. And I'm like,
Sure.
oh, 21-year-old guy, don't move. She just killed her husband and sitting there with a knife, like, in the kitchen sink, blood all over her,
Yeah.
pumping on him. And well, that's another story. So anyway, we chase this guy out and he puts the gun out the window and is shooting at us, right? So
Holy cow.
he ends up TCing into a pole right outside of a like VFW or
Okay.
something.
A TC is a
And
traffic crash.
traffic crash, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, signal 4 or whatever you guys called it up there, traffic crash. So he puts it in reverse, and the guy in front of me, his name's Scott, he almost get run over by this guy. He comes out with a shotgun, and I mean, everyone just shoots. I mean, everyone is just shooting the shit out of this Camaro, and you can look on the video. The 9 millimeter or the 9 millimeter rounds are going hitting the windshield. Remember the like 94, 95 Camaros had that slant. It was
Yeah,
like a
absolutely.
ramp kind of front windshield.
Yep.
The bullets are just doing that.
They're dancing off of there. Okay.
Totally. So 150, 200 rounds, whatever it was that was thrown at this guy. I almost get shot by my own people too. They gave me an award, best dancer in a shootout later, 21, And this guy, he's hit a couple times, but he's totally survives. Totally survives. Car is Swiss cheese, but most of them were deflecting off, and the sheriff said, "We're going to 40 cal."
Sure.
And that was the big thing back then too, because FBI said, "We're going to 40 cal." They didn't have the ballistic engineering and
Correct.
the materials that they have now.
Right.
Because really now they're saying, if you get a really nice, 9 millimeter round, global defense or something like that, it's
Yeah.
much better than But
Yeah, 9 millimeter, from what I understand, in today's world, is almost as effective as a 40 cal. There isn't a whole
yeah,
lot of difference, and they're
yeah,
cheaper.
penetration's really good and so forth. I was by like a Global Defense or a nice Hornady 147
Sure.
grain or something like that. And I'm not on the job anymore, so it's not like I'm going to battle every day. I carry a
Right.
43X.
So is that how you became got the Florida Medal of Valor?
No, 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 no. No. The shooting. I was like, I was always getting shot at. I was like, every time I show up on domestic, get shot at. This and get shot at. And it's like, one day while I was finishing my bachelor's degree, while I was on the first like 4 years, 3 years on the job, I had to go back. My old sergeant Chuck Hinkle, old time copper, had lit up 7 guys in his career. The guy showed me the ropes and how to be a street cop. He had been a cop down in Miami
Yeah.
before up there. And before that, Vietnam. He's gone now. He passed away a few years ago. This guy, guardian angel, he totally helped me out. He said, you need to go and get your bachelor's degree. And I was like, you think? He goes, dude, at that time, some guys had it, some didn't, but
Right.
no, it was not the norm like it is today. Like everyone has a bachelor's degree. Most people have their master's. So I went back and he goes, I'll split shift you. I'll do whatever it takes for you. And I went weekends, nights. He would let me do split shifts. I'd take it 10/8 when I came into the county. I'd go out of the county in my patrol car in uniform, attend the class, come back
Oh,
10/8
wow.
at the county line. He'd make me that zone and I just stay in that zone.
That's
The guy
super nice.
did super good guy. He goes,
Yeah.
hey, I'm helping you, but you're going to help the department because you're getting educated. So anyway,
Right.
so that really kind of put me in a good position to go, into street crimes unit. I didn't work narcotics, but I worked street crimes. I was seeing a lot of dope. I was working interdiction sometimes. I was doing all these things. And I remember I was 95, I was 75 and I pulled a car over and I'm in the back of the car. I'm in uniform. This is when I was patrol before I went to street crimes. I'm in the back and I used to go in the very back of the trunk when I'm on the interstate, especially, and I would look through the rear glass to the front glass and I would just watch and I'd write my tickets in the back just in case something happened.
Yeah.
I had a good buffer, right? And this truck comes northbound, I'm southbound, and they stop, they go in the center swell area. They get out. The guy has this, I don't know what the freak it was, but it's like the size of a judge. And he puts it right in the front of his jeans. And they have these badges. They were INS guys. And they jumped out of the pickup truck and they came over like, hey, bro, you good? We saw you outside the car. You got some shit bags in there. That
Yeah.
I said, hey, thanks for stopping, guys. And they're like, yeah, cowboy boots, like old school INS guys. And they're like, we'll just hang with you, bro, until you're done with your traffic stop, right? And then I wrote the ticket, went up. The guys are all looking because I have these like 3 or 4 INS guys, all plain clothes,
Yeah.
with blue lights flashing in their truck. And then they just said, all right, brother, take care. And they left. I mean, that's craziness, right? I was out there alone on the Interstate 75. But so that, had been in SWAT, then I went to street crimes, and then I went to CID doing detective bureau stuff. But right before I went to CID, I did 1 year. Well, not actually, it was about 8 months as an SRO because my scheduling for my college, it was tough. And he had let me work all the shifts and all the stuff. He's like, listen, why don't you go for the school year and then you'll be CID, but you're going to do an SRO job for 7 months or whatever the school was. And then you have time to get all your college done at night and wrap it up so you can graduate in 96, which is
That's
what I did.
very stand up for him to be doing that for you. And for those
Yeah,
that don't know,
great.
for like these letters, the alphabet soup, CID is what? Criminal Investigation
Yeah,
Division?
I'm sorry. Yeah, criminal
And
investigation division. That's
SRO
what
is School
school
Resource
resource
Officer?
officer. Yep.
Yeah, everybody has their like own stuff with that. Yeah, we
Yeah.
were CIB, Criminal Investigation Bureau.
Oh, were you?
Oh
Okay.
yeah, it's funny how everybody's got to have their own thing.
Everyone figures, I mean, when you're on the job, you figure it out real quick when you're talking, you don't
Right,
miss a beat. Maybe for viewers that don't understand. Yeah, that's
right.
good to
So
clarify.
Florida Medal of Valor, tell us about that.
Yeah, you know what? I really don't talk about it normally. I mean, not that I don't want to. I will talk about it. I just I don't even think I did anything that great that day. I was at the school. I was with the assistant principal. I think he just passed away last year or so. And I see all the smoke coming from an apartment building. And
Oh,
it was single story, but it was like laddered, like steepled, like you had apartments steepled up back, like that. And what had happened is someone had, I don't know who it was or who had done it. They had a motorcycle, they drove to the back and they put it back by the air conditioning unit in the back and they leaned it against the building. And somehow it caught fire. It went up the vinyl siding to
oh
the
wow.
attic area, got in the attic, and it started spreading inside. They didn't have the proper firewall containment. It was an old, really old building.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm on a golf cart with the assistant principal. I'm like, dude, that's on fire. He goes, what? I go, look. I was like, we got to go over there, right? So I go over there, and there's 10 or 12 apartments, you know, and I just start kicking doors.
Sure.
And first couple I kick, no one's in. I go through the third or fourth, what I can't remember what it was. I kick, and I hear something in the back, and there's smoke and everywhere
Yeah.
because this had been traveling inside through the back. Somehow the overhang, it got in there, burned, and it
Mm.
was putting fire and smoke into the thing, and it wasn't blocked off right. So, I mean, that's what the fireman told me. I don't know, I'm
Yeah.
not. So I go to the back, and when I get to the back, there's no one in the freaking bedroom. But I hear under the bed, wow. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I go to grab this cat, and I see there's flames in the hall. Like,
Yeah.
if you've ever been, I'm sure you've been in
I
near,
have.
okay. And you see it kind of doing this, but it's not like a backdraft yet, but that shit's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, and I was
And,
like,
and it gets fast. That stuff is just
fast. I didn't
fast. Yep.
realize how fast. And I had seen
Yep.
a lot of fires. So I looked and I'm like, holy shit, I need to go out the window. I'm not fucking going back through there.
Right.
Whip the curtains off, bars are on the window.
Oh,
And I'm like, ah. I'm like, oh shit. So I'm like, I got the cat and me, and I'm looking at him, old Mittens here. I'm like, what am I gonna do? So as I go halfway down the hall, it's hot as hell.
oh yeah.
And I throw the cat. I literally baseball throw the cat. Like, wow. Through the air like this, lands in the living room and out the door because I could see the light now. It was really
Yeah.
dark, until you get a little closer. Then the door was open, and the assistant principal, or whatever, he's like, "Wes, get the fuck out of here! What are you doing?" So I'm crawling out. It's hot, smoke. I get out. I'm like choking, but there's still, I don't know, 8 or 9 other apartments, right?
Yeah.
I start kicking doors, and sure as shit, I come in. Uh, baby and their mom are in there, and one of
Oh
them,
God.
the woman, and I'm like, get the fuck out of here! Come on! She's like, smoking. It was a mess. But thankfully, everyone was absolutely okay. And besides the 4 or 5 people that were in there that were sleeping or whatever, because it was actually in the mid-afternoon, but like mothers with kids or
Yeah.
old women, and so they were like taking naps, whatever. And so the firemen were like, dude, these guys might have freaking died and woke up too late, because once it starts to go with this, oh, it was all wood frame. We're talking probably constructed in the late 60s,
Right.
these old apartments. It just was to go off. So we get all the people out. I'm happy as hell. I'm excited. I get back on the cart and I'm like, all right, let's go back. Principal's like, that was fucking awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Kicking doors, and when you kick a door, a wood frame door, it's like explodes, and I was just boom, 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 door to door, grabbing people when they were in there and when they weren't. I had mittens, right, throwing mittens out. So
Mittens is okay.
uh,
That's the main thing here. All right.
yeah, mittens was okay, and the baby and the baby in that back room, that was pretty, that felt rewarding,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Baby. So anyway, so then next thing you know, they're nominating me for this award. And I was like, who did I tell? Oh, I told the assistant principal. I was like, I don't want no freaking award. He's like, Wes, older guy, take the award.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm like, I really don't feel. He goes, don't say that. Take the award.
Because I'll tell you right now, without knowing you that well, you've done 100 other things that you probably could have gotten an award for or more and never got any recognition. So what I would tell my guys, I was a sergeant for 17 years, so I wrote up a lot of guys for awards. If they deserved it, not
Yeah,
stupid stuff that,
legitimate.
not the politically correct, we want this demographic to be on
Yeah,
stage as well,
right.
which I see a lot of it. It makes my stomach turn. But that's the world we live in. That's just the way it is.
Yeah,
And you know, for those that are not in the know, you said it's hot. Well, it's freaking Florida. So
yeah,
it's hot to begin with. When you're inside a building that's on fire, you literally feel like you just jumped inside your stove.
yeah,
That's the best way I could explain it. Like when you're making a pizza or something or whatever, oh shoot, it's you open the door and it's like, wow, that's hot. Imagine your whole body being in there. That's what it feels like.
yeah. It
And you have
was,
no protective equipment whatsoever.
yeah,
And kicking down doors is not like Hollywood.
yeah.
Some of those doors don't go down in one kick. They take multiple kicks. And if you got to kick multiple doors, you're gassed.
Adrenaline dump, you know how
Oh yeah.
that goes. Especially after finding Mittens. I'm like, but I was like, I have to check. I have to check because it was all on fire. I was like, I have got to go in here and check these homes. I mean, I've been in my career, I've been to a home where people were burning inside. I had one, it was what, three kids and a
Ugh.
grandmother, right? And you can't get in, you can't get in. Like the heat,
Oh, it's
you don't understand. And car wrecks and stuff, the heat is
yep.
so strong and people are burning to death sometimes. And pulled this one guy out. He was burning in this car. We got him out. He was really messed up, but he survived. And the heat, and when you see on TV, people are like, yeah, they're sitting there with their iced tea,
Yeah.
They're like, how bad can it be? Well,
Yeah.
let me tell you, that day with Mittens, I actually thought like, I'm gonna fucking die in here because
Oh,
I was like, how am I gonna get out?
right.
And when you open that feeling of dread when I ripped the curtains, I'm like, oh shit,
There's
bars,
bars. Oh boy.
um, and I am in trouble. But anyway, so they gave me the award, and
Good.
my daughter, Ane, I have a picture. I was holding her when Sheriff Mylander is his name. I just had lunch with him a month and a half ago for like his 83rd birthday. A
Oh
bunch
wow.
of us went and had lunch with him. Great guy, great sheriff. Spent three-quarters of his life, and still serving his community. Great guy, but he's the one that pinned the Florida Medal of Valor, but yeah, I don't really talk about it too much. I do put it on it's part of my police record
Yeah,
and so forth.
absolutely. No, you should be
Not like
proud
I'm
of
not
that. That's
proud of
awesome.
it, but you know,
That's some real hero shit. And it's real hero stuff. I mean, that's not a lot of people have the balls to do stuff like that. And you do. So good on you. And I see too that you were an instructor throughout your career, it looks like, in law enforcement. You were doing instruction stuff. Now, what do you see, looking back and looking at today, what do you see as our weaknesses and strengths in law enforcement regarding training? And that's all levels.
yeah, yeah. So what I noticed was, going back in the day, you had guys that had a different kind of experience, more practical type of hardcore, violent, maybe less legal restriction kind of experience. And then it kind of changed where it became more of a legal process and the instruction became more of, you know, kind of like robotic. And then, as it changed from the 90s where it was like, balls to the wall, and then it kind of went to more of a legal standard, and now everyone's talking about case law. I mean, case law, like back in the early 90s, we're like case law. We did talk about some case
Oh
law.
yeah, you have to, sure.
Talked about, why do we do these frisk stops? What does that mean? And how could, all these different things, but we didn't go into the detail now. I was at a police department when I retired, And it's like every couple of months we're having like just hours of case law and all that. I'm
Ugh.
like, Jesus. I mean, we have to have a balance, right? So I
Absolutely.
think
Yes.
that was the big change that I saw throughout my career. And it's still kind of stuck in everything is legalese now. Everything is, are you going to get sued? Where's the culpability? Do we have potential exposure here? Everyone's worried about that on the legal end, but also on the social media end. Someone bows up to you and they put their hands up and the cop punches them in the nose and knocks them on their ass. They're all over TikTok. Oh, this cop abused this guy. So then you have that factor as well. You have all the social media. So I think the biggest thing is when I first started teaching when I was younger and I was doing more of the physical stuff, we didn't talk about the legal aspects as much, especially in a SWAT environment, because we're going in there, we have clear evidence of something's gone wrong, and we have to put a stop to it and detain what's happening, right? So then when I was later in the sheriff's office, I did some basic training stuff, nothing great because I had only 5 years on the job, right? So it was mostly geared toward what I knew as far as, defensive tactics, martial arts, things
Yeah.
like that. When I went to DEA later, then I was teaching overseas. I was teaching, you know, gang stuff when I was in Central America. I taught, the Supreme Court of Guatemala. Taught some of their justices, the Fiscalia, which is their equivalent of the AUSAs or ASAs,
Hmm.
all the prosecutor's office. I was teaching classes on, you know, controlled delivery, T3. We were teaching them how to write the T3 laws with this. What we actually implemented T3 laws, which is telephonic intercept legal capabilities in some of these countries, and
Mm.
we gave a foundation and walked them through how to write the law, how to make it, how to implement it with the police, and so forth. So I got to see a broad spectrum of holy shit. We're doing gangs, we're doing wiretaps, we're doing all this stuff. But in the end, I still stand behind what I said, and I think a lot of that is a natural progression and where law enforcement goes and how it kind of ebbs and flows. Right now, it's still ebbing, it hasn't flowed back.
Right.
But I think, and tell me what your take is. It's a litigious society, right?
Oh,
So
absolutely.
everything's about that right now and perception.
But what, you often hear, it's like the warrior mindset. When I was in the academy, we had Vietnam era instructors, like in say in firearms.
Mhm.
We had guys that were SWAT for years that got into some really hairy stuff. And there was no BS. There was no sugarcoating anything. And they were some of the best instructors we ever had. And they were super smart. You
Mhm.
combine, guts, technical abilities, and intelligence, boy, that's unstoppable. And they can articulate. It wasn't just, you shoot to stop the threat, blah, blah. They went deep into the weeds with you as well. And if you were a good shot, they would make you a great shot.
Mhm.
If you're a great shot, you're putting groups in like this. It was unbelievable how good of a shot you became because of those instructors. And and I'll go back to the warrior mindset. And it's like I remember one day it's like, O'Donnell, you get shot in the face, you wipe that blood out of your eyes, and you stay in that effing game. There is
Mhm.
no quit. We had that mentality of there is no quit. We would go on these forced runs. One time we were running for like over an hour up and down stairs and sprinting down down hallways. And I remember the instructor screaming at me. He's like, O'Donnell, you are no longer aerobic. You're anaerobic. You're turning blue. And I'm just like, yes, sir, I'm turning blue. He said, you have to breathe. And
Yeah,
I'm just
right.
laughing inside. And I'm just like, I just wanted to die, but there was no quit. I
Yeah.
see that has disappeared. It's more softer, gentle, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, do you have to be a warrior? Yes, you do. The guy that runs into the building that's on fire or the school where you have somebody shooting it up, there's only one person that's going to do that, and that's a warrior. But that doesn't mean you're walking around with your chest puffed out. You're going to, the missing kid or whatever. You're not going to draw your gun on grandma and,
Yeah.
act like a tool. You have to be the master of a lot of different things to be a
Yeah.
good cop.
Right.
And I won't get on my soapbox too much, but what drives me nuts is when I was new, we'd have in services
Mhm.
or newer. Everybody dreaded it. It's like, oh God, death by PowerPoint, whatever. And the good thing was we would train, it was the tactical enforcement unit. That's what we call our SWAT unit. We had a
Yeah.
full-time unit.
Yeah.
And we would do room clearing, stairwell clearing, just,
Hmm.
like basic stuff to get your head in the game, high risk traffic stops. They're plastic guns, but it still got you in that mode. We didn't have the money for simunitions. Later on we did, but it got you in that mode, and then you would sit down and talk about it. You'd debrief.
Yeah.
Okay, hey, you know what, Wes, that was really good, but that the bad guy would have taken you out if he wanted to,
Yeah.
because of you did X, Y, and Z. And there's some gut checks, there's some ego checks. You think you're a big time operator or whatever, and it's like, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was, but you need that. And that's
Yeah.
completely gone now. Completely. Defense and arrest tactics. You know, I would talk to
Night
buddies that,
and day, isn't it?
oh my God, but defense and arrest
Night.
tactics, you know, what people don't understand is if you have a well-trained cop that could put the end to a physical confrontation quickly, less people are going to get hurt and or
Hmm.
killed if they're trained and they can put that person on the ground in half a second flat and get them cuffed up, get them in the recovery position and off to the races. Fight's
Hmm.
over. We're done.
Yeah.
Instead of this talking, talking, talking. I mean, there is a time to talk. There's no doubt about that. But this, the key word is de-escalation. And
Hmm.
there is a time and a place for that. And
Sure.
there's also a time and a place to put hands on people. And cops are scared now to put their hands on people. Hesitation will
Yeah,
kill you.
100%. Yeah.
It will kill you.
See it all the time. Or you
I had a buddy
talk.
that was in the suburb cops. He was in a suburban department, and they were doing jujitsu. They're in services. This technical college. He says, "Man, today kicked my ass." It was all ground fighting. Maybe about 10 years ago, it transitioned to ground fighting
Hmm.
because where do most fights wind up? On
Yeah.
the ground. You're rolling around with, whoever, trying to get them
Hmm.
hooked up. And the smaller police academies saw that, but Milwaukee, oh no, we can't do that. And I remember there was a gal that was teaching. I wanted to be a DAT instructor. I'm like, yeah,
Hmm.
that sounds really cool. And I met in service, and there's a gal that's easily 75 pounds overweight. She looked like a muffin, and she's trying to do, she'd be in front of the class, and it's like, okay, here's your baton, do this, and she's getting winded, doing like two or three strikes, and I'm like, oh my God. And this is the gal that I won't say who she is because, I'll protect her dignity, but she couldn't wear a vest anymore because she got so fat. And when there was a man with a gun call, she worked in a district that I worked at. She said, I got the perimeter. I don't want to go in there because I don't have a vest. And I'm like, you suck.
How's
You
that
are
even?
horrible. And then they made her a defense and arrest tactics instructor because she checked a box. And I'm like, oh, this is so sad. But I mean, that's what I see. What do you see?
No, 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 100%. I mean, listen, I think what happens is when you have this mode of, from an agency perspective, you have the leadership is in survival mode. And let me tell you something, sometimes you'll have leaders in these positions that don't belong
Oh,
there. Many times you'll have that.
yeah. There's some
And
that do. There are some that do.
100%, there's yin and yang, right? I
Mhm.
remember I had a boss in LA, and this guy had been in LA his whole career, except for a couple of years he had done in DC and went right back to LA. And we are talking about Mexico. And I was running out of my division. I had groups and we were running some of the biggest cases in DEA in Mexico. And I said, we need to go to Mexico City. And he goes, I don't go to Mexico. I've never been to Mexico. I was like, what? Spent 25, 28 years or whatever in DEA in Los Angeles, and he had never, ever been in Mexico.
And he was a boss.
He later became the SAC.
That's
And we did not see eye to eye on many issues because I thought some of the things he was doing actually were very unsafe. I was very vocal about it.
yeah.
Exactly what I'm doing on this job. I've done it all over the country and many parts of the world. And I told this guy at one point, I said, "You're gonna get this person killed. What you're telling me to do," he was ordering me to do something. I was like, "You're gonna get someone killed." He stands up, points his finger. "I am the boss." Okay, boss. I walk out the door. We do what he says. Next thing you know, guess who goes to WITSEC?
What's Woodsuck?
I'm sorry, Witness Protection Program.
Oh, yeah.
All the cables get written, someone's going to die because they immediately think this person is cooperating, which they were,
Oh
And
boy.
I'm like, yeah. So I walk right into the office and, boss, you are the boss. Oh, yeah. He was not happy. He was not happy with it.
I'm
But I mean, that's just one of several things and at the end of my career, I would just speak my mind. I didn't care. But,
right, right.
yeah, but going back to when I was training, when I was training overseas, whether it be in Latin America, Central America or Mexico or whatever it was, I got to teach with the FBI in Chiapas and Tijuana. I got to, teach national police in different countries, teach in El Salvador, in the International Law Enforcement Institute and all that, all those things over there. And, I created a program at the time so we could track Mara Salvatrucha because they were transiting back and forth Central America, Mexico to the United States in different parts, and we didn't know who the hell they were. We might have a name Chepe, in Omaha, Nebraska, but when he went back, he would become, Jose Rodriguez
Mm,
Lopez, whatever.
right.
We didn't know who he was. So I was like, you know what? I wonder if I went to these jails and the judicial heads of these states in these different areas. We go to the Fiscalia and I collect all that information. We turn it into a database and I call it gang associative networking groups. And
Okay.
we share all this information across law enforcement platforms run out of Epic, which is the El Paso Intelligence Center. And we share that with all the law enforcement officers around the country. We create a big database. So my boss at the time, Larry Holyfield, great guy, regional director, he's like, hell's yeah, hell's to the yeah, we're going to do that.
Yeah.
We do it. Fast forward, new boss comes into town. He's like, yeah, we don't work gangs. I don't give a shit about gangs. DEA doesn't worry about gangs. Give it to the
Because
FBI.
gangs and drugs don't go together at all, really.
And the boss is a great guy. I mean, he's a great guy, but he was way off on that one. And I was just like, I had worked for years on this thing, a couple of years in Central
Oh,
America, killing myself, and then handed it to the FBI, and they created a new thing, and they took it, and it's still utilized. But now we have databases coming out of the yin yang. But
wow.
at the time,
So,
so yeah, so training for me took on many different forms in different
okay.
country things, but I still believe that the tone set by the administrators of whether it be a chief of police or a sheriff or whatever it might be, that tone is going to ripple down. And then when you have inconsistencies in agencies, it would change over chief of police, chief of police, chief
Right,
of police,
right.
new sheriff, new sheriff, new sheriff. It's just waffling all over the place. And we don't have the stability that I feel that we had 20 or 30 years ago. It's just not the same to me. It doesn't feel that way.
Yeah,
And
I agree with you. I agree.
everyone's feeling it. So how can we have consistency in training if we have a consistency in change and changing of what we're going to teach and how we're going to teach and what's the stance? So it's a tough environment for these new kids coming in. And I think it's a day and age when, you know, we have to kind of wait to see if the dust is going to settle. Let me look at the last 5 years, after what we had with George Floyd. Look what happened with that. So and then you just had the sentencing in the Brianna case, with the
Yeah, I
detective
saw
getting
that.
three
Yeah,
years. Guys and gals are scared to do their job.
absolutely. Like I said, you could see the hesitation. They don't want to go hands-on anymore.
Yeah,
They just
right.
don't. And if you put on a uniform and you got a badge and a gun, there are instances where you have to, where you can't de-escalate, where you have to take action. And if you don't, you're going to get yourself hurt or somebody else hurt, another cop or another or a citizen hurt.
Yeah,
It's that simple.
Yeah.
And you're tried in the court of public opinion, social media, blah blah blah, and very weak politicians, and it's all about optics. And what they're
Hmm.
not taking into consideration is this cop had half a second to make this decision. That's going to impact the rest of their life. And not
Yeah.
just them, their families and friends as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's enough of that. I can tell you story after story, but I won't. I'm getting all riled up. So, how long were you with the sheriffs?
Like I said, about 5.5 years roughly. And then
What was the
at
idea
that
to go to
point,
the DEA?
yeah, so my buddy from SWAT, David Bell, he's like, hey, I'm going to the FBI. He gets hired by the Bureau. He goes to the FBI Academy, gets out, and he's located in the Appalachian region, and he's not very happy because he's a new guy. So he's getting all the crap work dumped
That's
on
what
him, right?
happens. Yep.
Guy. So I was like, I finished up my degree. It was 1997. I'm a detective bureau. I'm like, what am I going to do? I have to make a decision. We didn't get paid anything as a sheriff deputy. I mean, I was making, as a detective, I think I made 28 grand in change. I mean, we just didn't make any money. So when saw that I could go to the feds and make 45 grand a year, I was like, oh my God, that's $16,000 a year raise. That's
That's a lot of
huge.
money. Yeah.
Yeah, 45 grand a year. You imagine that. So I talked to him. He's like, yeah, you don't want to come to the FBI, man, because I'm bored off my rocker. But I work with these DEA guys and they seem like they have a great time. Started looking at DEA. 62 countries we're in or whatever, all over the world. These guys reading the stories. We didn't, we just started having like, Yahoo and some of these search engines, Netscape and all this other stuff, trying to read about what this DEA does and looking at the shows on TV and so forth. I was like,
Sure.
wow, that looks like a great job. So I applied, but it took like 2.5 years, a year, almost 2 years or whatever, to get hired with them. The process was freaking demanding back then. I remember my interview with the psychologist. Like last minute, I'm like, be at this area of Tampa, and then oh, be at this hotel. Oh, go to this room, and I'm like you have agents outside, and the shrink is inside, and you walk in, and he's like, hello, Wesley Tabor, welcome. I'm like, are they gonna put me in the bathtub, and I gotta wake up in ice with my kidneys missing. It's kind of weird.
You
So
got two. You can spare one. Come on now.
yeah, I'm like, this is strange. Go through, a 4-hour shrink interview. The polygraph was very lengthy. I'd never used a drug in my life. I had never used marijuana, and the guy didn't believe me. He's grilling me and grilling me. Then he's like, okay, yeah, welcome, good job. So, playing the games with that, the
Sure.
background took forever. When I went for my original interview in Orlando, it's like 35 guys in the room. And they were doing like a week every day with this. I'm like, holy cow. And they said something about nationwide. There were like 12,000 applicants for I can't remember how many jobs it was, but it was not many jobs. It might have
Right.
been 400 jobs. There's like 12, 13,000 applicants.
Wow.
And I'm in the room with like Marine Corps captain, master's degree,
Oh
station
God.
from Stuttgart to, San Diego. And I'm like, holy shit, am I going to get this job? And luckily, I had a pretty decent resume at that point with CID and SWAT. And that guy was so impressed with the Medal of Valor thing. I'm like, that's all my background guy.
See,
Oh,
there
that's
you go. Yep.
amazing. Oh, amazing, amazing. And I'm like, dude, that's like I said, I just wasn't impressed with it, right? But they loved it. And I think that actually helped me in the background and all
Sure.
those different,
I bet it did.
I really believe they loved that. And so I
But
get
did you
hired.
bring a picture of Mittens with you? I think that would have
I
really
I
pushed
should
you
have.
right over the top.
All we had was Polaroids back then, right? So I could have, I guess, turned the Polaroid
Yeah.
and done the selfie with Mittens,
Here
you
I
know.
am with Mittens.
I didn't do it, but I should have.
You
But
should
yeah,
have,
that's
damn it.
amazing and part of the story. But yeah, so they called me and said, back then it was like you get a phone call and I'm like, yes, sir. And he goes, can you be here in 10 days? I'm like, wow. And this is just before Christmas. And
Oh
I had to
wow.
be there January 6th or January 5th or something. So back then, if you didn't say yes, they just shred
Done. Sure.
your shit shredded, right? Oh, he didn't want that bad. Shred it. So I was like, phew, I was preparing actually to go to law school with my captain in CID. And we had both taken the LSAT. We're both
Okay.
applying. I had graduated with honors. I went from, last in my class in high school to graduating with honors.
Wow.
And I said, hey, I'm going to go to law school. Took the LSAT, had a great score with my LSAT. And I'm no genius, by the way. I'm furthest thing. I am probably the dullest tool in the shed, but I have a lot of utility. That's my only saving grace. And I studied so hard for the LSAT with VHS tapes from a library.
Oh,
I
wow. Cool. Okay.
This is the era we were in, right?
Right.
I'm going to the library, taking out the LSAT study guide thing, and I'm just over and over and over taking the test over and over and over and over and over. And I was just killing myself. And so I got a great LSAT score, and he did too. And he's like, let's do it, dude. They're opening a new school in Orlando. I think we can get in. They had a program for law enforcement or something like that. I was like, yeah. But when I got that call, I went into his office and I said, hey, I got a call from DEA. He's like, "Oh shit, you cannot turn that down." I said, "Yeah, I told him I could go,
Yeah.
but I wanted to talk to you, and I feel horrible." He goes, "Dude, what do you feel horrible about, man?" He goes, he was a little bit older than me. I was like 27 at the time. He might have been 36, 37. And he's like, "Dude, I missed my window for that shit. It's, I think you're gonna have a great, great time, man. Go fucking do it." You want to go to
Yeah.
law school, do that later. You can do that. There's no age requirement. All of a sudden, he's knock yourself out. So I go to DEA. He later did become a lawyer, retired from sheriff's office, still practicing law in Orange County, Florida.
Wow.
But yeah, yeah.
So
So
off you go to the DEA.
yeah,
Now, could you give us kind of a bird's eye view or a snapshot of your career?
sure, sure, yeah. So after I get out of the academy, first duty stations in Midwest. We're talking 1997, 98. Meth is just on fire across the whole of the Midwest. People are destroying their lives with methamphetamine. And this is not like the methamphetamine coming out of Mexico. That was just starting to begin. This was home cooked labs,
I was just
right?
going to say, it sounds like it's home cooked. Where in the Midwest?
Des Moines, Iowa, St. Louis Division.
No kidding. Wow. Oh,
Des
St.
Moines,
Louis.
Iowa.
All right. Well, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of St. Louis Division, just
Okay.
out, but it's close to Chicago, but St. Louis Division.
Right.
And that's where all of our dope was going, Chicago, and
Yep.
Minneapolis.
Then it was going to
And
Milwaukee.
I mean, Milwaukee, Madison, all of it,
Oh, yeah.
all. So they would, these local cooks would cook up this meth. And then, for the most part, it was more like local. And then as it gained steam over the years, it started going regional. Then the Mexicans got involved and started coming up from Mexico. Most of our dope was coming out of Riverside, and we were doing controlled deliveries out of Riverside, where we're loading up 3 or 4 bad guy cars, 800, kilos of meth, and we're transporting on C5s, C17s to Des Moines, unloading it all with the bad guys doing the controlled deliveries, and we're rocking and rolling, and we're working day and night. When I say day and night, I don't remember the first almost 3 years of my life there. I mean,
Really?
it was so busy. They had thousands of labs a year that were getting taken off. We didn't respond to all of them, but DEA paid for the cleanup. It was such a problem that Congress allotted DEA money to provide to locals for cleanup.
Well, it's a hazmat situation.
Yeah,
When you stumble upon a lab where they're cooking meth, that's a hazmat situation. There's all kinds of crazy chemicals, and that's why, people would find them or they'd be discovered kind of easily because it's like you can't hide this.
yeah,
It's just
yeah.
gross.
It was bad, and we had this one case that I talked about. I won't get into it too much, but this is the depravity that some of these people existed, being like this, which I don't understand. But had one guy selling meth to the mother who would bring her child in and give the child the meth, film it doing sex acts with another person, and then
Oh,
this guy would give meth to others, and they would do other things with their other kids coming in. It was just he would videotape it. His one of his buddies had HIV, and he was
oh,
this gay guy that had HIV, and he would I don't know how he wouldn't participate in like the acts per se, but he was close to the action and he was a weirdo and it was diabolical, doesn't give it justice. And when we went to take him down, I I actually thought about just killing this guy. I was so disturbed and angry. I mean, we're all human, I mean,
Right.
and this guy ran, he wants to fight, and I had pulled my gun out, and I'm on top of him, and the TFO that was with me was like, don't fucking kill this guy. He like grabbed me. Don't fucking kill this guy. Don't do it. Don't do it. Put your gun away. But he had been fighting us.
Yeah.
We didn't know, he'd run and fought and all this. But he knew me pretty well, and he looked at me and he was like, "Oh, he's gonna fucking kill this guy." And
He's got that look. Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to kill him. I had lost it momentarily. It happens in careers.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
perhaps you were
Like you
human.
said, they're human beings.
Yeah. And what I had seen this person, what he had done, it was just unbelievable. And I gathered myself, hosted up, grabbed this guy, and we brought him to jail. And he went to jail, I think 35 years. He was sentenced 35 years or so. But
Wow.
that's the kind of criminals that we were dealing with. And Senator Grassley, Chuck Grassley, is a famous in the Midwest senator in Iowa, and he wanted to make sure that DEA had the resources, and they had what's called a regional enforcement team. Regional enforcement teams were located one for East Coast and West Coast, right? So they put them in Des Moines, Iowa. They put the regional enforcement team west in Des Moines. So that office, when I originally got there in 1998, went from like a two-man, like POD kind of office, a post of duty office, to we had a rec team and like 30 guys in a matter
Okay.
of like 3 years. It exploded to combat what was going on with the methamphetamine.
Do
So
you
then
do you remember like the biggest seizure you ever did when you were located there?
we had the seizure. It was 18 pounds of crack, 18 pounds of crack cocaine. And for those that don't understand crack cocaine weights, that's a shit ton of
Yeah,
crack.
that's a
Like
lot.
there are people that have never even seen like 2 or 3 pounds of crack. Usually, when you get a crack arrest, it might be a big one, maybe 6 ounces, maybe 8, 10 ounces,
Right.
maybe, 16 ounce if it's like a massive case. We had like 18 pounds, all rocked up being transported. And we did a controlled delivery with the guy who decided to cooperate. We were really good at that. That's where I learned how to cooperate people. We would flip and cooperate, flip and
Sure.
cooperate. We would do knock and talk to warrant, to warrant, to warrant. We'd do an arrest, and 4 days later, with no sleep, we are like, everyone's dizzy with sleeping in their cars, sleeping at the office, sleeping just house to house to house, cooperator, cooperator, cooperator. And we would take, a 10 kilo deal and turn it into a 40 key deal, with like 25 people arrested in 4 days. It
Yeah,
was
see,
crazy.
for those who don't understand, it's like, okay, you get a little fish and then, you said you flip them. So it's like, okay, you're hanging, this arrest or conviction or, whatever sentence over their head. It's like, hey, you know what? I could talk to the either district attorney or state attorney or whoever that makes these decisions. It's like you could work this off and then, it could snowball from there. And I'm assuming that's what we're talking about.
That's exactly what it was. And we would get, sometimes to ask for the lawyer, we would call, the public defender would come in and look at it and say, "Hey, it's a good deal, dude." And they'd be like, "What?" Yeah. I mean, we had that relationship with the public defender and
Mm,
sometimes even private legal counsel because they knew, like, when we had it solid, we'd show them, like, dude, here's the traffic stop, here's the video, here's the.
yep.
But in this, in these cases, we would sometimes we bring these guys out. We couldn't trust them, like the guy with the
No.
18 pounds of crack. We leg shackled him to the brake pedal of the car, put him in the parking lot where he's supposed to meet up with a guy, right? And this guy's like, it's sitting there, you know. Sometimes we might put it undercover in the back or with them or whatever, but
Right.
depends on the situation. And the guy's like, "Get the hell out of the middle of the parking lot. Come here." He goes, "No, I'm not leaving." He couldn't. He didn't have a key. We ripped the battery out of the car. He's shackled to the brake pedal. And then the guy would come up and we'd take him down and we'd try to flip him and go to the next one.
Right.
So it was those were the kinds of cases that we were working in Des Moines. And I learned every aspect of the job with DEA. I learned how to do evidence. I learned how to do this. I learned how to do that.
Well,
I
you're
was,
also learning how to write warrants. You could
yeah,
probably write a warrant in your sleep.
yeah. I did T3s. We were doing wiretaps with the regional enforcement team, which was that big team that Grassley wanted in place. And the first case they ever did was my wiretaps.
Oh,
So I'm writing wiretaps the summer of 2000, writing wiretaps, and I'd be at work 3 days just writing.
oh.
Writing. And I remember one of my partners at TFO, he's like, after I think it was the second day, like it was like 7 at night or something. He's like, dude, fuck this. I'm fucking going home. I'm like, yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, okay. He goes, dude, fuck. I'm like, we gotta get these done. Monday's coming. It's like, like Saturday night or whatever it was. We've been working on this since Thursday. Because when you get a call that comes in on a Wednesday and they're like, "Hey, we got the call. This is your lead into your T3." Uh, it was funny because there was a guy named Pat Floodquist. He was an agent out in LA. He later worked for me in Venezuela, but I was working off his Title III affidavit to spin me up on my Title III affidavit. And then fast forward 10 years and he's working for me in Venezuela and I got to meet him in
Oh.
person.
Do,
So
do you remember your biggest money seizure?
Uh, yeah, that would have been Chicago. Yeah, that. So when I left Des Moines, I had actually been hit by a drunk driver in 2001 before I left Des Moines. So I was still a 4 or 5 year on the job agent
Okay.
coming back from a wedding, and I get hit by a drunk driver who he was doing over 100 miles an hour. My brother
Oh,
was driving in the seat with him. We were just came on the on ramp. There was a huge tractor trailer truck that was doing like 55, 60, and we went to go past him to do 65, 70, and just kind of pass him and then do our
yeah.
thing. So as we're up next to the semi truck, we can't move. I look in my mirror and I see this car just barreling down on us, and I'm like, oh no, this is not good. And I could tell, especially as a cop, you can really judge distance, timing,
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
because you see it all the time and you're doing it all the time. I'm like, dude, we're gonna get hit. And my brother's like, what the? And then like seconds after, we had just passed the semi truck, but he put his brakes on and did this, and then hit that bumper like in a pit.
Okay, sure.
Put the car sideways into the ditch, rolled 5 times. Then when it went
Oh,
end over end the first time, it rolled end over end, bounced up, came and landed on the roof. I'm
oh.
6'5". I had my seatbelt on. I couldn't go forward, couldn't go anywhere. The roof collapsed and just crushed
Ah,
my spine. And I see 3, 4, 5, and 6. All the facets were all crushed and destroyed. A spinal cord injury, trapped in the car. It's paralyzed from the neck down. I had some basic, well, I didn't have really movement. This is what I had. So I'm upside down hanging there. My brother was like, get the fuck out of the car. I'm like, dude, I can't move. I can't feel anything. He came down, looked at me. My head was way back. My body was facing forward. He's like, holy shit. Like, this is not good.
yeah.
And you have to let the seatbelt up, which he eventually let me off. I felt like a ton of bricks because I had no control of anything, but I could breathe again because I had been, you know, restricted so much with
Mm.
all my weight. I was like at the time like 276 pounds, 275 pounds, 6'5", just huge dude. And all that weight is pressing. Every time I breathed out, I couldn't fill my
Oh,
lungs again.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
getting worse and worse and worse. So as I fell on the roof upside down, there's fuel, and he was like, "Do I try to drag you out? Paralyzed? I'm going to kill you." And I'm like, I go, here's the deal, man. I said, uh, if it catches fire, just drag me out. But until then, just wait. And then the
Leave
fire
you.
department
Yep.
starts coming. A doctor who just got done doing a training for the fire department paramedics had driven by the accident,
Oh,
stopped,
oh my God.
came
Wow.
in to the car, and he's like, "Hey, bro, what's up?" And I'm like, "I'm paralyzed." And he's looking at, okay, you've been here like what, 7, 8, whatever, 6, 8 minutes, whatever. And he's like, the only way that we'll ever possibly get you to ever walk again is if I straighten your neck out, but it might kill you. And I was like, fuck it, do it.
Do it.
I'm
Yep.
just do it because what am I gonna do? like live like this, you know, it's
Right.
so tough. So he's like, all right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then when he straightens my neck, I felt just this bolt of electricity go through my whole body. But
Wow.
I didn't feel anything. I couldn't feel, it's like, you know, when your leg is fully asleep, like literally fully asleep,
Yes.
and you're like, you can't feel shit. That's what I felt. But you know it's there.
Mm.
That's what I felt like. But if you touched it, I couldn't feel it. So it's like a new next level on top of being like totally asleep. Your limb, like no blood or pinched nerve or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what it. So I was like, holy shit, I just felt this thing go through me. He's like, don't move, don't move. And he stayed in there. Fire department came. They put a collar on me. They put a backboard. They
Yeah.
had to cut the whole fucking car apart because it was a Saturn. Remember the Saturns?
I do.
Biggest hunks of junk on earth
Yep.
that don't exist anymore. You know, they're like, I was like the Mario Kart gorilla.
Yeah.
That's what I looked like, right? So, and you're a big guy too, so you know what I mean. It was like I
Yep.
was screwed, got me out. They flew me to North Memorial in Minneapolis. The surgeon there had operated like on 4 or 5 guys before me that day.
Oh
And
my
this is
God.
8 o'clock at night or whatever, 7 o'clock or whatever it was. And he's like, oof. So he did some treatment to me, but they couldn't operate right away.
Sure.
They had to get the swelling in my spinal cord down. They had to give you medicine, put you in traction, do all this shit. And and it's so difficult to explain to someone like you're totally helpless, you can do nothing, you feel nothing. And only thing I could do when I was on the car was like I could kind of flop my arm a little bit. That's the only movement I had.
Uh,
But I was like, holy shit, I can't fucking use my limbs. I can't feel anything. That realization is like, oh shit, you know.
were you
I'm
on a ventilator?
no,
Oh,
no, I
thank
could
goodness.
breathe, but I was having problems breathing.
Yeah.
But I think because he straightened my neck,
Mm.
I think that actually saved that level because so the spinal cord had been curved where it was bent. It's not supposed to. So everything on the inside that's been compressed
Yeah.
loses life, right? When so for that 8, 10, 15 minutes, whatever it was, I had lost a lot of cells in that
Okay.
spinal cord
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
Straightened me, it saved the remaining area that hadn't been damaged.
Ah. Okay.
And so even though it was highly traumatized, they didn't know where I was at, where I was going to end up,
Sure.
right? So week and a half later, whatever it was, I have surgery after they had put me in traction, drilled holes in my head, stretched me out, and you know, I'm just laying there like while they're doing all this shit to me, I can't do anything. And I go to surgery. They cut all the back of my neck, all the facets out, and they have to round the bones because it's all sharp and broken.
Yeah.
So back of your spine, you have, you know, the spinal cord like this, and you have these parts that come on the back like that, right? They were all crushed. Everything was crushed.
Oh,
They had to go and cut it all and then round it so it wouldn't hurt me. And so anyway, so I get out of surgery and I'm in this intensive care, but it's like intensive care on steroids. They have a nurse standing, or not standing, but sitting in a chair like 2 feet from me, like this, looking at me, like watching me breathe. And then a couple hours, another nurse would come in, another nurse, and they'd rotate, like to see if I'm like breathing or if I'm having a problem. Or it
hmm.
was weird because I don't know anything about medicine,
Yeah.
but for the first 24 hours or 18 hours or whatever it was, they had someone sitting there, even though I'm hooked up to all the machines and all the shit.
Yeah.
Someone sitting there watching me, physically watching me in person. And I was so thirsty because I hadn't drank in like a week.
Oh
Nothing.
God.
Lots of IVs in me, right? But I was so
Right.
thirsty. I was like, dude, you got to give me something to drink. He's like, I can't give you anything. But I have a sponge, like a little lollipop sponge,
Yeah.
and you can suck on that. And I'm like, yeah. Dude, he gave it to me. I'm like, it's like sucking on a dry sponge. I'm like,
Yeah.
there's no, huh? I'm like, holy shit. And that's when I talk about like A Clockwork Orange, if you read the novel or seen the movie based on the novel, where they have him strapped to a chair and his eyes are open, they're putting drops in it,
Oh
and
yeah.
he's just sitting there like this. That's encapsulate how I felt. Like everything's going through your mind. One minute you're like able to run like half marathons and start, you know, bench pressing like 250 for a warm up with 25 pull-ups, and you can do all these physical things to you're paralyzed and you're laying in a bed and you're like,
Mhm.
I can't move. But I said, okay. The doctor's like, I don't know what's going to come back, what's not. So, we don't know what's going to happen to you, but I know one thing, if you don't try, it's not going to happen. So started rehabbing after after a month and a half or so, I actually could stand. I walked like a robot. I couldn't really use my arms really. I just kind of would do this, you know. But this is early and I'm actually able to get on my feet kind of and like do the robot walk. And I'm like, oh, fuck. Okay. This is better than being in a chair with a straw because
Absolutely.
I had planned if I'm going to be in there with a straw, I'm going to send someone, hey, I need a lemonade. When they leave, I'm going to take that and go in the pool.
Oh,
And
all day
I'm like,
long.
I'm doing it. I don't care. I
Right.
can't live. But my luck, I would have went over the ledge of the pool and it would have got stuck. Hanging over the pool, and they pull me back and then I'm on psych lookout, right? But that did that didn't happen. So as I'm recovering, uh my boss was great, old school guy out of New York. He would come mow my lawn. Got back to work. They medically cleared me. The DEA doctor actually was like, "Yeah, you're not fucking coming back to work." My surgeon's like, "Fuck you. I'm a surgeon. Who the fuck are you? You work for DEA." You
Right.
know, I'm a surgeon. I went to Yale. I went to whatever. Where'd you go, pal? And he wrote another letter telling them to kiss his ass. And they were like, we got to kind of accept it. And they changed the policy on that to where you have to do like a test to come back on a physical test. I
Mm.
would never. When I went back to work, I was useless. I couldn't draw my gun. I would just sit at a desk. My
Oh,
boss was like,
wow.
"Dude, you're doing great, man. Research this for me." And I just sit at the desk, like drooling half the time, like I was so in pain. But
Jeez.
after, and this is a year later, right?
Wow.
I was messed up. So, but I would hit the gym. I was doing my PT. I came back 3 years later after language school. I had put in to go to Guatemala. Three
Mm.
years later, jungle missions in Hilos. I don't know if I sent you any pictures, but
Yeah.
I'm doing all these missions in Central America, going after the gangs, working big cases. The first Hezbollah Colombian drug lord case called Operation Titan. I got to do a small part of it, and where we received the money, $20 million in cash was seized from this organization that was actually going to go funnel back to Hezbollah. It was a great investigation out of Miami Group 10, and they were the ones that were spearheading it along with S.W.A.T. Great case. I got, so many bags of money out of that. That was my
$20
first.
million. dollars.
It was over $20 million. Yeah.
Wow. God bless it. And was that in Chicago?
That was in Guatemala.
Oh, in Guatemala. Okay.
So I had left Des Moines to go overseas because I still wanted to have this dream of doing all these global cases.
Ah, okay.
And I was so hurt and messed up. But when I came back and my boss saw, oh, this guy's actually killing himself to get back on the job, because I
Sure.
did. I was 31 years old. I want to get back to work, right? I want to be productive and do things. I was a cop and I didn't want to stop being a cop. And
Were
he
you
had this job,
when
I beat up 75 guys.
when all
Luckily,
this when all this accident stuff happened in your rehab, very long, painful rehab to get back to where you were or close. Were you married or have kids or?
yeah, married with kids. And, but
Oof.
luckily I had all my sick leave for the 6 years before this happened, or 5 years or whatever. And then they have a leave program where you could donate leave to sick people.
Yeah.
And people all over DEA donated me leave for that year. But after a year and all those hours and hours, it was dried up. And I had to come back to work. And that's when I went back. But my boss was great. And he's like, just have a seat here. I need to research all this stuff for me.
Oh, okay, okay.
Sit there all day long, basically, like
Wow.
in
So
pain.
you get back up on your feet, things are going good. When did you start traveling overseas?
That was in I went to language school, put in for DEA Guatemala. That was in 2003. Went to language school, reported shortly there, like 8 months, 7 months later, into Guatemala City, and I stayed in Guatemala City working a myriad of cases. And my family was there with me, my kids, they were in
Yeah.
school, the whole thing. And I stayed till 2007 when I promoted out and I went to Chicago from Guatemala. I came back. I became a supervisor in Chicago. We're working all Sinaloa cartel money operations. The Flores twins, Margarito Flores. I don't know if you've heard of his name
Mm.
or not. He's one of the biggest cartel members associated with the Sinaloa cartel. Who's in Chicago. We seized close to $30 million of his money, cash in
Wow.
stash houses. Took down a whole trap operation, traps for commercial trucks. They had a whole garage set up, dedicated like 15 guys. All they're doing is trapping out trucks and trailers for the organization to repatriate cash.
For those who do not know, what's a trap?
So when a trapper, a clavo, so you're gonna take a hidden compartment in a vehicle, you fabricate a box, you fabricate whatever, and sometimes you put electronic mechanisms in it that are open, like you might put the radio on 101.5, then put the left blinker on, and then tap the brake twice, and that trap will open up. We
Hmm.
call it a trap, right? And you'll hide secrete drugs in it, and then you close it up, and you can't see it until you do that sequence of the blinker, the brake, the whatever, and it'll pop open again. And they were doing this in big, big containers. The whole beds of trucks. You could put thousands of kilos in it or millions of dollars. But we would go into some of these stash houses, the stash houses where they kind of put the money, they collate all the funds together. Then they put them in the trucks that they prepared with the traps, and they drive the money back to Mexico and bring it across the border.
Oh, okay, okay. So,
Secret
and that
information.
was Sinaloa cartel, you
It
said?
was all Sinaloa cartel.
So
Yeah.
what were the local gangs that would be kind of in have their hands on that and be
You
involved?
know, for the most part, you're looking at in that area, you would have like they even had like Spanish Cobras. I mean, you had them in
Yep.
Wisconsin.
We had 'em in
They
Milwaukee.
had some of the local gangs that I had nothing to do with. Nothing. Like a lot of the African American gangs, I knew nothing about them. I didn't involve myself with them at all. My focus was the cartel and the main players that were involved in what they were doing. My gang involvement was in Guatemala, and we were looking at Mara Salvatrucha, 18, La M.A., all the prison gangs, all that stuff
Hmm.
that were coming to the U.S. But when I was in Chicago, I'll be honest with you, I don't know anything about any of the black gangs or anything. I never had anything to do with them, but it would all come down. So you have the Sinaloa cartel, which used to be, and it still is, but it's losing steam to CJ&G, the Cartel Jalisco Nuevo Generacion, which is a competition to the Sinaloa cartel run by a guy named Mencho. So you have the Sinaloa cartel was the top dog at the time. Now you have an up and coming gang called the CJ&G. But at that time, it was the Sinaloa cartel. And the Sinaloa cartel was running drug operations in the US, period, for everyone. Chicago was one of their huge, obviously, operations along with
Yeah.
LA. But so my focus at that time was strictly top dog, Mexican cartel figures, stash houses. I didn't work the lower level gangs. That was HIDA, high
Okay.
intensity drug trafficking
Yep.
area.
We got that in Wisconsin
They
too.
did all that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, they did all that. I worked on with my group. I had a task force group. They were awesome. They were doing a great
Did you
job.
work much with the Chicago PD?
We did. I had a task force group, but I didn't have all the Chicago PD guys. But whenever we would have a lot of big operations or we were doing a lot of surveillance, we would call on the other groups that were DEA, and a lot of them were Chicago PD guys. But I had mostly suburbs like Summit and Elgin and some of the other local PDs on mine. But
Okay.
Chicago guys would come out all the time. Sometimes they'd stop us, and we're doing like 85 and like a 30 one time paralleling on surveillance. We had
Yeah.
a stack like $3-4 million in it. And we're paralleling a guy. We didn't have a tracker on the car. We're doing like 85, 90. And the Chicago PD guy pulls us all over. And when he pulled over the first guy, there were like 18 cars behind him. And everyone pulled up behind the Chicago guy with their lights on. And the Chicago, he gets out and he's looking, like 20 cars, all fed behind him. He's just like, he gets in the car, turns his shit off. We all just take off. Yeah, he figured, all right, something's up.
Yeah, something's up. I don't need to know about it. Bye,
Yeah, I don't
guys.
even want to know. He just did
Yep.
this, he got in the car. That was the end of it. But we ended up taking out the stash house.
All right.
And, but yeah.
So you were in Guatemala, you go to Chicago. When did you go back overseas?
So 2010, I wanted to I got the itch to go back overseas, and they had a spot in Caracas, Venezuela. And Caracas, Venezuela was a hot spot, and it was a dangerous spot, and it was everything that I wanted to go do because it was like, the open range. It was just no rules. The DEA had been kicked out because we were spies, according to Hugo Chavez, who was the president at the time. And I was like, also at the time, all the flights for cocaine were coming out of Venezuela, Pure Venezuela. So you have the FARC in Colombia, so kind of get the geography right. So you have United States, you have Mexico, Central America, Panama, Colombia, Venezuela on the very tip. It's called the Northern Andean region. Okay.
Okay.
Andes Mountains, Northern Andean region. So the FARC, which is the Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionario Colombianos, they were moving and growing and cultivating all the coca and all that stuff, and they would move all the drugs using geographical optimization, rivers and things like that.
And this was mostly cocaine, I'm guessing.
Cocaine.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is all pretty much cocaine. There's heroin too, but the big heavy stuff we're talking is going to be mostly the cocaine. And
Okay.
they would bring that to Venezuela. The Venezuelan government, many of them, which is known as the Cartel de los Soles, which is kind of infamous now. You hear it on the news. It's been mentioned by Pam Bondi. The DOJ is now investigating with the FBI to take down this Cartel de los Soles, which is basically corrupt government officials at the highest level in Venezuela. Well, all this was in the inception. It was kind of like in the swing of things, but
Yeah.
no one was really paying attention. I want to be a part of it. So I get selected, I go down, and it's on. Like when I get there, I feel it. Like I have people following me. I'm under surveillance. Um,
How did you
I-
know? Like,
well, I
give us
mean,
an example.
yeah, so I mean, you get trained, you get doing surveillance, and you learn how to do
Sure.
counter surveillance when you're an agent, especially. And I was in a surveillance detection unit, right? I was doing street crimes and all these other things. So over the time, I developed a really keen sense of how do I do surveillance, how do I look for counter surveillance. So when I'm down in Venezuela, to simplify it without getting into too many things that could be sensitive, you could look and see over time someone that is showing up, right? Like you're maybe driving or you're walking or whatever. And when you see a person a couple times and you recognize the face, but they might have a different shirt, they might have whatever, you're like, okay, this is not a coincidence. And we'll get to the point where my wife would be there and she would call me at first because she had never really been involved in any of this stuff till she got there, and I had to kind of teach her how to look for surveillance. It
Ah,
was,
okay.
it was kind of tough on her because she's like, "Hey, I'm being followed by like a couple guys." I said, "How long have they been following you?" She goes, "Oh, for like a half hour." I'm like, "Okay, where'd you go? Why didn't you call me sooner?" She's like, "Well, I was here, then I went here, but I'm seeing this guy over and over." I said, "Have you heard him speaking?" She goes, "Yeah, they're Cuban." I said, "Perfect. You're good. Don't worry. Just,
Why? Why is
I knew they were Cuban intel, Cuban intel, Russian intel. You have various intel agencies operating in Caracas, Venezuela, and the Cubans are huge numbers down there. And when I say huge, you have the association between Venezuela and Cuba, especially at that time with Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro before he
uh
died. Then his brother took over. They are hermanos, like we're brothers. The socialistic movement lives great, which is really Marxism, which is really cute, communism,
communism?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, the principle is based on Marxism is, oh, we're all going to share the government wealth. We're all going to have, the same socioeconomic standards. We're all going to be of the same whatever, but that's never how it works out. And it creeps up with socialism where we're all going to help each other. We're all going to take these pots of money. We're all going to take all these things, and we're going to make it an even playing field. But over time, like in Venezuela, where he introduced this to the public, they're like, I'm going to get a free refrigerator. I'm getting a free house. I'm getting free education. I'm getting free this, free that, whatever. They're like, we're voting them in. Then they vote them in. Then little by little, they start taking all of these equal playing field things they promised. And it becomes more of a dictatorship, right? More of a
Yeah.
communist thing. And that's in our hemisphere, there's no success stories to socialism. It just doesn't exist. And and that's what was happening in Venezuela. So when I got down there, I was being followed at times by maybe it could be intel from a different country. It could be Cuba, it could be Panamanian, it could be whatever, because you have different agencies, whether they're police intelligence or military intelligence or whatever it might be. They're all vying for the money. Who is this DEA guy? What are they doing? Are they identifying what we're doing? What do they know? And they want to find that out.
Okay.
So it became a very, very quick learning curve for me. It went from just counter surveillance to like counter surveillance mode for me on steroids, and then
So,
that I was meeting with informants and all those
okay.
things. Be very, very careful. And a
So
lot of times,
you're in Venezuela, and I remember reading in from your book, and you said, you look like super gringo. I mean, you stick out. You're 6'5", 250, 275, and you don't look like you belong. So, and you're wearing like a t-shirt. What was that? And you had to
yeah.
go get
So
you had to go get like a soccer t-shirt to try and blend it or something like that. I was laughing out loud when I was listening to that.
yeah. So, when I lived in Central America and I worked in Guatemala and I would travel to Honduras or El Salvador, Mexico, whatever, I would dress over time. I was kind of just enveloping myself into the culture in those towns, and I would wear shoes that would look like a foreigner to us. I wasn't wearing the Nikes or the Reebok or whatever. And when I had first got into Venezuela, I had made an error of the fact that I have to change some things I wasn't thinking. And so I arrived in Venezuela. One of the first weekends, I said, I'm going to go to the biggest mall in Caracas. It's called Sambil. It's like a million something square feet. It's massive. And massive. Train station runs through it. It's like Mall of America times five. It's huge. So I walk in and the place is busy as hell. I mean, there's just thousands of stores. And if you ever been into an Embassy Suites where the tower where all the rooms are goes up and the center is all empty, but you have all the rooms going around the sides, right? So I come to this big dome area that's like that with like 9 floors, whatever, and the center is empty. And I hear a crowd, everyone's going ape shit, and it's the World Cup.
Oh boy.
Ghana versus USA. And let me tell you something, they were not rooting for USA.
Yeah.
Okay. So, typically in Latin America, we're all like neighbors, it's brother and sister, whatever, especially back in the early 2000s. People liked the United States. People wanted to go to the US. They respected the US. Well, the whole mandate of Chavez was screw the USA, screw the Imperio, screw the Yankees, and that rhetoric translated into what the public was saying as well. And I felt it that day, right? They're like, down with the Yankees and screw the Yankees. And I'm like, holy shit. And it was a chant. And the whole place, everyone had kind of flowed to this big dome area levels. And there were big TVs hanging everywhere because soccer is just massive in Latin
Right,
America.
right.
And it's like, hating gringos, hating gringos. And I'm like going, oh shit. And I have my Notre Dame shirt on with a
That's right, Notre
white
Dame.
over and green. And I'm like, oh man. Yeah, this was a lapse in judgment, right? So I run over to a shop that sells soccer jerseys and I grab like, first of all, their large is like maybe a small for us. So I'm
Okay.
like grabbing six grande and I'm like trying to get something as big as I can. I throw that thing, I buy it, and I throw it on in the fucking store, like literally change right there. Hold up. I still have the shirt to this day I wear sometimes. I keep it as a memento. And and I walk out and I'm like, I'm out of here. I kind of go out trying to blend in a little bit better with my soccer jersey, But yeah, so that was Venezuela, and my job there was to catch HVTs or high value targets and to assist in capturing them for whoever it might be, DEA, HSI, FBI, whatever. And I did that for I caught.
How many
Well,
American agents were there with you?
at that time, the office went from 30 to 2, and then we lost one. Yeah, because they kicked everyone out because we were spies,
Oh,
right?
okay.
And people that don't understand, so like in DEA, we call CIA primos. Primos in Spanish is cousins.
Okay.
So we always say the cousins, the cousins, the cousins, cousins, because we were created by George W. I'm George Walker,
H. Okay.
HW,
Yeah.
right? Herbert Walker Bush. and he was the head of the CIA for many
Right.
years. When we were when it he didn't create per se, but he kind of created the new modern version of DEA because we were actually Nixon in 76 created DEA, but he kind of brought it to that next level in the 80s, you know. So we're in existence for like 8 years, and then Herbert Walker Bush, Daddy Bush, came in, and he got us the academy. He got us all these things that he started trying to build for us. Put them in motion. How can we make this happen? How can we give them more power? What can they do? And that's why similar ways sometimes we do things might be similar to what the agency does,
Okay.
right? But we're very different, night and day different. Like I can't even say that, night and day different. The agency picks like people that are extremely intelligent, that are a lot of Ivy Leaguers, because their job is to debrief and type, debrief and type, debrief and type, debrief and type. And they do their intel, and it's a very different way that we do things because we want judicial process, arrest, conviction. They don't care about that.
So you're in Venezuela and you're going after high value targets. These are people that are importing massive amounts of cocaine to the US.
Yeah,
Now, were you
hundreds
a,
of tons.
were you able to put any cases on these people or?
Yeah, so what I did was I was facilitating by arresting different drug lords, right? And what I would do is I would arrest an individual, they would go to the US and flip, and then they'd create other opportunities for
Okay.
other cases. So you have, not only that, but you're identifying who are these actual people. Some of these people like Tarek El-Asaimi, right? Tarek El-Asaimi at the time was the Minister of Justice. After I left, he became the Vice President of Venezuela. Then he became the oil minister. Now he's sitting in prison in Venezuela for traitors acts and whatever else they threw on because he wanted to be the president. And Maduro is not going to let that happen. Maduro was the vice president when I was there, and he had Hugo Chavez, who died shortly after I left in like 2013, right? But their whole goal was to flood the US with dope and destroy the social fabric of America so the Yankees
Oh,
would be suppressed and he could come victorious with his socialistic movement and
okay.
be like Simon Bolivar, which is their George Washington, right?
Okay.
And our job was to go and identify, talk with, and to my knowledge, I'm the only person, the only agent that has ever met Tarek El-Asaimi. I met him several times, and
Now,
we had interesting
as
conversations.
far as history goes, where were they in their economy when you were down there? Were they in a boom or were they in the slide or
They were able to get by, but their debt was mounting. So their relationships with China, their relationships with North Korea, with Russia, Iran, and Syria, they were kind of playing in the same soapbox that, the Chinese were in and all
Mm,
these other nefarious actors. They weren't on like Team USA, right? So they're going with the scraps. Well, the
okay.
scraps were Russia, Iran, and the planes would come over from Russia and the Iranian boats and all that stuff. So it was very much USA versus Venezuela. What can we do? We want to identify, we want to get cases and arrest,
But
which when I retired, they actually did indict like 15 of the top level, including Nicolas Maduro and many of the generals that I met with. I won't go into their names specifically, but I
now
was meeting
you
doing.
had no arrest powers there though, correct?
Oh no, I didn't have arrest powers whatsoever.
Were you
No.
able to carry a gun?
Well, interestingly enough, no, but I did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, yeah,
Because it sounds like a dangerous mission,
it was
you
very
know,
dangerous.
and
Yeah.
did you have like a cover? Like, hey, I'm a businessman. I'm
No, no,
whatever.
no. I went down. So I went down. I got my visa, but I didn't want to certify my visa, which means you get like a diplomatic, what's called a carnet. It's like a diplomatic card when you
Yeah.
go through a formal process to formally declare your diplomatic status, and they give it to you, right? I didn't do that for like 5 months because I didn't want to risk them changing their mind and then say, why are we giving this guy a credential when he's a DEA guy? We kicked him out of country and so forth. So I remember I got a call from the DCM, which is the Deputy Chief of Mission. He's like, Wes, I need to talk to you. I'm like, Sure. I go upstairs. He's like, what the fuck? I go, what happened? He goes, you haven't been credentialed? You haven't submitted your shit? I'm like, no, I was afraid to. He goes, fuck, you gotta get that done. Because if you don't get that done, you get wrapped up. It could be a problem. They could say you're not a diplomat and fucking
Right.
hold you. I'm like, I'm not worried about that, you know. And he's like, no, you're fucking doing it. I'm like, because I was putting it off as long as I can. I was so afraid, based upon a conversation I had with Tarek El Assaime, the Minister of Justice at the time, on the tarmac after I did a HVT operation, successful HVT operation. I'll tell you about how I did it, one of them at least. I won't say who it was or anything
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. And he's looking at me. And when I told him I had a visa, he was surprised and shocked because it's more when you get a visa to go there, it was like a vice, right? So the Venezuelan wanted a visa, the US wanted a visa. Who do
Mm.
we trade visas to get visas for each of us to put us in
Oh,
country?
okay. But I
And he
mean,
didn't fucking know. He didn't know. He thought I was coming out of DC on the plane that we used to get the guy out of country. And
oh,
it,
okay, okay.
I told him basically, like I was kind of like, I'm like, no, he goes, go back to DC and tell your friends. I said, I could tell them from here because I work in the embassy. And he was
What
like, yeah, yeah.
what was your life like though down there? It was very anti-American. I mean, if you meet somebody or acquaintance, you can't say you're a DEA agent.
No, I wasn't, I'll be honest with you, for the 2 years I was there, 2.5 years I was there or whatever. Um, I really didn't have a life. I was working day and night. Like I had, so this is where we talked about the primos, right? Like I was not a primo. That wasn't my job to do espionage. It was not my job to do intels. My job was to collect evidence, collect intelligence on the criminal side for
Yeah,
judicial advantage on these people and collect and get HVTs, right? But many of the things I had to do were very much like you would see a spy do, right? Because I couldn't just go out and meet with informants. I just couldn't
right.
go out. So I had to do dead drops. I had to pass information. I had to do different phones. I had every month I would get about 15 and 20 phones brought in diplomatic pouch. I'd have to switch my phones out. I had to destroy my phones. I had a block of wood in my office with a really sharp axe, and I chopped them up in little pieces. And
Oh,
when I go out at 2 or 3 in the morning and throw pieces of it across Caracas over bridges into the water all over Caracas,
wow.
avoiding being tailed or in
Yeah.
taxis or it was a very interesting time of my life because it was like spy games, but it was not just spy games. It was I was actually trying to get certain targets arrested or evidence on them so that we could wrap them
So,
up. And
were you working with any local authorities? Were they helpful at all?
no, they're not helpful. They were all indicted now. So
Okay,
knew they were all criminals.
sure.
But what I wanted to do was work with some people just enough. I'll give you a little vignette, but I won't couch it in terms of who it is,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. So I had to catch this one person who's a prolific money launderer, worked for a Mexican organization. Okay. This prolific money launderer was hooked up with a Colombian money launderer and cocaine trafficker, okay, of huge proportions. When I say huge, like they had the ability to hack into my stuff. They had hackers employed by them. All this stuff about the FBI got hacked and all this has been going on for a long time. They just haven't talked about it. My stuff was being hacked. I had intel reports coming in, from DEA and my sources and things saying he's after you. He's trying to get into your internet and your phones and all that stuff. I made it hard because I had just so many phones. I was rotating 15, 20 phones a month for years. Just, all these phones coming in, keeping them
Yeah,
track, writing magic marker on them, Pacho and, Frankie and whatever.
yeah,
And, it was almost overwhelming, but I loved it. And that's why I was working like 17 hours a day and night, day and night, day and night. But in this one target that came in, this target had kept getting out of jail, had a red notice from Interpol, which is a flag for international arrest warrant. The Interpol was corrupt in Venezuela, so they were just as corrupt as everyone else because Interpol is actually in these countries are the Venezuelan officials that are cross-designated as Interpol agents. Okay.
Okay.
They're really Venezuelans. They just have an Interpol jacket on, right? So they were corrupt and they were basically targeting all the people that had arrest warrants and charging them every month. 100,000, 200,000, 50,000, 80,000, whatever they could. And they were making money off them, the multiple targets. They're making millions. And now they're all indicted. But in this case, this person was paying to get out of jail every time they come down. And I got word at one point, this person was held up in one of the police houses. And I wanted to get word to them like, I know that the person's here. If you let him go, I'm gonna fuck you all up. Okay. We're gonna go after you guys too. As I'm walking up to the house, my phone goes off, and it's a guy, I don't know if he's Cuban, I couldn't really tell, but he's like, stop what you're doing, turn the fuck around, and get in your car and run as fast as you can because you're gonna fucking die.
Holy cow.
And I'm like, hmm, interesting. Hung up the phone, got in my car, and got the fuck out of there.
Hell yeah.
So, so this person was released, gone. So fast forward a few months, person's coming back. Had an informant that knew where it's going to be. I had someone on the payroll that could affect an arrest, but that's not enough to hold the person because that person that could affect the arrest doesn't have enough juice to, and I say juice, power or
Right.
authority when all the other people come in and say, this person's ours now and pay us off. Okay, you're free to go. So what I did was I had a reporter that I knew that offered to help, and I offered the reporter a lot of things, but one of the things was to come at the deportation of the person when the DEA aircraft come. I brought him the
Oh,
plane,
okay.
did all kinds of stuff, and gave him a good story, right? But it's very dangerous for this reporter. So I said, come to this area and wait. What am I waiting for? I can't tell you.
Yeah.
What do you mean you can't tell me? Well, I'm not going to fucking tell you. Well, what? Why am I going to waste my time? Do you think I'm wasting your fucking time? I'm not wasting your time. If you wait there, you're going to be very happy. So he's like sitting there with like a TV crew,
Yeah.
like sitting there. So when the informant meets and the cop goes and effects arrests, I make a phone call. Hey, you might want to come to this restaurant right this second because this person who's a wanted Mexican trafficker is being arrested. Holy shit, really? Yeah, you have like 20 seconds.
Yeah.
So band pulls up, live TV. Now they're fucked. Now it's on live TV. Now everyone knows this person trafficker is caught. They can't just let him go. They take to the jail.
Okay.
I go to the jail. The general's there, like this, looking at me. He's like, you motherfucker. He's looking at me like, you motherfucker. And I'm like, wow, you guys did a great job. This is fantastic, man. You guys killed it today. What a job, law enforcement, you guys did. And he's just looking at me like, you son of a bitch. So a month later, I take the reporter, put a DEA jacket on the reporter, walk him through the magnetometers onto the field in the DEA plane,
Oh my God.
takes all the pictures. We throw him over a fence afterwards, get the jacket back, and he takes off running. He has all the photographs, and he was happy as a clam, happy as a clam. And I was
So,
happy too. And we got the target out.
see,
So
I was going to ask you, what's the motivation for these informants that you were running?
money and different things.
Okay. Because yeah, like in the United States, it's like, okay, we've got paid informants, then we got informants that have, a case hanging over the head or a beef, it's like, okay, they're doing it for pure selfish reasons.
Yeah, yeah. Most of them are doing it. I did have one guy that helped me get. We did actually a National Geographic special on a guy named Loco Barrera, who was kind of like the masked man. No one could ID him. Had an informant that came forward. The FBI actually brought him to me, and they said, "You want to work this guy? We don't know if he's telling the truth or not. We're not up to speed on what was happening in Caracas, but we know you are." We go out and do the meet, and of course, I have to be careful. I'm being followed, right? So I'm shifting him and moving him certain ways that we do things to look for counter surveillance. I approach him, I'm talking to him for 5 minutes, and I'm like, this guy's the shit. This guy knows what he's talking about. So I utilize him. The case ends up being successful later, but they kill his partner, torture him,
Oh,
and this is his own government, his own
wow.
chief. of police are killing and torturing him in their office. And so I have to get him and his family out. We smuggle him out of the country, put him in a safe house in Colombia. Later, we bring him to a safe house in the United States. He ended up going on to be a U.S. citizen working for the agency and for
Gotcha.
the FBI and DEA. And we still
Interesting.
talk today. But yeah, that's a rare occasion you'll have someone that's just doing things, for the betterment of their country because he
Yeah.
saw what was happening in the country.
Interesting. Now, in your book, you talk about weak governments are breeding ground for these gangs.
Mhm.
I was surprised that Hezbollah and Hamas were in Venezuela. Could you
Yeah.
explain that?
Yeah, so what I'll tell you is this. You have a guy like Tarek El-Assaimi who grew up in a family of terrorists. His father was a vice minister in the Ba'athist Party in Iraq. They had moved. They had come to Venezuela when he was younger. He was basically engaged in terroristic, opportunistic kind of like rhetoric since he was very young. And he was when he got out of college, he became the governor of Aragua. Aragua is the state where Tren de Aragua began. Okay. And when you look, and I'm just connecting a few dots here,
Yeah.
look at some of the documentation coming out of Washington, D.C., you'll notice that they mention the name when they're talking about the designation of the foreign terrorist organization, Tren de Aragua. They mention the name Tarek El-Assaimi. Why would they mention that name? They don't put it in context. And I'm putting the dots together here because I
Mm,
don't know exactly what they have. I know what I know about Venezuela, and I'm just surmising what's going on. And during Chavez's socialistic movement, he did all these social programs in different areas to put jobs in the communities. Tarek El-Assaimi was the governor, and they built a rail project. Tren de Aragua means the railroad or the train of Aragua. So it's the railroad state, basically.
okay.
Tren. He's the governor. Tren de Aragua goes there and starts basically charging all the locals to go do their job. Oh, you want to be a dump truck driver here? You got to pay me 20%.
It's like the mob.
Yeah, you want to pour concrete? 20%. Well, the rumors had it that back in the day, portions of these payments would go to guess who? The governor, right? So then you have a strengthening due to the fact that you have corrupt officials allowing this environment, permissive environment in Nicaragua. And what happens then? Then it gets out of control. They try to crack down on it a little bit. They try to put them in jail. When they put them in jail, they grew more and more and more. And then that's why a lot of people erroneous will say, oh, that's a prison gang. Well, they grew in strength in prison, but they actually were created on the streets
Mm,
trying to extort people for money. And then it eventually got to the point where they're taking over whole prisons, there are prison riots. The agencies and local agencies in Venezuela try to contain it. Some of them flee, they go to Chile, they go to Panama, they go all over the country. And then, of course, they have an opportunity with the open borders of the last 4.5 years, before Trump came in the second term. And they come to the United States when they're met in the US and they're like, oh, don't put your hands up. It's okay. Here's a debit card with 5 grand on it. Here's a
yeah.
ticket anywhere you want to go. And what city would you like? And how do you want it? Oh, here's the clothing. Here's the food. We'll put you up in the hotel. And we basically spread them throughout the country and put them in all these cities, 17, 22 different major cities in the United States. And that's how Tren de Aragua spread in the United States. But, it all goes back to that permissive environment, local government environment in Venezuela with, Tarek El-Assaimi.
But yeah, when I heard Hezbollah and Hamas, I was like, really? I was
Yeah.
surprised by that.
And if you dig a little bit deeper, you'll see some of the contacts between Hezbollah, especially Hezbollah, trafficking, money laundering, because Hezbollah needs funding. And how do they get funding? They get it through narcotics trafficking. And the
Mm,
epicenter of narcotics trafficking, especially at that time and especially now, is cocaine production, transfer, logistics through Venezuela, where a lot of this money is. But it's much more than that because if you fast forward from Tren de Aragua time and where Tarek El-Assaimi, keep saying his name over and over, he became a minister that was over passports at one point. And what do you do with passports? You create identities.
Mm,
If you backstop an identity very well, you could have someone from Hezbollah or Hamas, before the degrading of the Venezuelan passports in Venezuela used to be, you can go anywhere you want with that passport. Of course, now it's down in the dumps. But at this time, in the 90s, they could go wherever they wanted. Venezuela is a wealthy country. It was an ally of the United States.
right.
That, when you start looking at some of the history behind that, and you can Google that and look at some of that stuff, you'll see that there's a common denominator. And that's, I think, why we're seeing what's coming out of the Department of Justice regarding LSM.
Wow. Without getting too political, like you said, for 4 years plus, we had an open border, more or less. And this is just, bad guys like that, just licking their chops. It's like, oh, cool, we can embed into the United States now.
Oh, yeah, they did. They are. It's done.
Why
And I
can't
think,
why can't people see that? I just don't understand that.
I don't understand it. I think sometimes people get so fixated on the political hatred
Yes.
that they don't look at the sensible, result of, well, let's look at the common sense here. We want to help people come into the United States, but it went from helping people to everyone deserves to come here no matter what, open the borders. And that's where you start losing, your country. Because if you don't have a border, if you don't protect what you have, if you're not able to care for and tend to what you have,
Right.
financially and physically and security wise, then what are you going to have? You're going to have Honduras, right? And our country has 350 million people in it. And it's a big Honduras to have to go from the shining light beacon to the world to, the big Honduras that once was called Gringolandia.
Yeah, I was looking at, one of the questions I was going to ask is the TDA gang that started there, them spreading this gang and others spreading into the United States and their influence, and how much they have gained traction in America. It's like, how do you stop something like that?
So if you look at the history, starting with like Mara Salvatrucha or DC8, or you look at Miami in the prisons, what happens is you have all these Latin American gangs, and I talk about that, in the book.
Yes.
Have these Latin American gangs that come in the US. They kind of go back to their home country where the violence exceeds far that of what the US used to have. Now we have, I would say, in many cases, an equality of violence. Whether you look at Chicago or you look at parts of LA, it's more sectional in these cities, but and that's kind of been cured in a sense. And I talk about in the book with Bukele, which, in El Salvador, where they opened the Seco prison, which is this massive prison for all these gang members. But you have the ability in these foreign countries where they just suspend the Constitution, which they did. And everyone's like, I love him. He's great. The guy in El Salvador, president. And he has a lot of favorable attributes, which I really like. But they suspended the Constitution for him to continue to be president. Okay. That's number one. Number two, they suspended the rights and constitutional protections for all these people they locked up. And he says, wow, no one's crying for the victims of these crimes. No one's crying. Listen, I was there. I was on the streets. I've almost been killed by gang members in shootouts because they were shooting, and I'm stuck in the middle of it on the floorboard of my car with my dog curled up, waiting for the gunshots to stop, right? I've been there. I've seen these guys. I've been where they had the autopsies. I used to go teach it. I've been all over that country. I've almost been a victim of robbery and kidnapping and all this stuff and all these stories that I haven't even talked about, right?
Yeah.
I understand the victim, and I talk about it in my book where I had a friend of mine. They were in their neighborhood, and the gang comes, knocks on the door, and says, "If you don't give us our fucking rent money, we're gonna rape your children. We're gonna rape your daughters." Okay. And you know what they did? And go in the book and look at it. They all got together. It was like it was like a gated community, but it was uh like a rectangle, a stretched out rectangle, like a bowling alley with homes all around it, right? So they brought their cars to one end of it, all the fathers, there's like four of them. And they got all their guns and they had the cars. When the gang guys come in, they fucking just ran them all over, killed them. When they walked down, they just took their cars and just it was like a bowling alley. They had nowhere to go and they ran them over. And they just took the bodies and threw them outside. And the police don't give a shit down there. It's like they're like, oh, thank God, another gang member, because these guys are all tatted up,
Oh,
unlike
okay.
DEA, where you don't have all the tattoos typically. You might have some. You might have a Michael Jordan, Air Jordan on the tattoo. You might have a clock, but all those things are not going to be sufficient to ID them. But when you're dealing with the Mata Salvatrucha or DC8 or the MA, you're going to have, some more factors that are going to be play into identify them quickly.
Hmm.
But, but so I understand when you have that the extreme violence that's affecting these victims. But then again, the last thing I want to see in the United States of America is where we're suspending our Constitution, we're suspending certain rights for individuals
Right.
to provide protection. So we're doing just the opposite of what we should be doing. And I think the only time we've ever had suspension of habeas was with Lincoln in the Civil War, where he did suspend certain things in the Constitution. But when you're doing that, you're playing with fire. And I think once we open up that Pandora's box, we're going to have severe issues. So getting to how do we stop this and what do we do? Of course, I don't have all of the answers, but I talk about in my book where I would actually go where they had programs to help these gang members get out of that life, including tattoo removal,
Yeah.
psychologists and counseling to get them. And I saw these guys that went from killing savages to talking about their feelings, trying to do the right thing to get a job and move on with life.
Wow.
I
Okay.
saw it. I saw it.
Yeah.
It's not a huge percentage, but it's a percentage. And the difference between that and the life continuing in the vein that they were doing with killing and robbing and extorting was opportunity. If you don't have opportunities, just like look at Hitler, what happened? My stepfather was 86 years old when he died a few years ago. His wife was from Germany, and
Hmm.
he was talking to her father and her grandfather, and they were talking about like either you became like part of the machine, the Hitler machine, or you died. And he would say that. They would say we had to like play along with this, or they're
Yeah.
gonna kill us.
Okay.
Now, I'm not trying to justify what they did and Hitler and all these other things. This is horrible, obviously.
But you can see
But
where the breeding ground is for it.
you can see kind of, okay, are you with the Führer? Sure.
Yeah, you got a gun to your head. There's not a whole lot you're gonna.
He
Yeah,
actually said
I
they
get
would
it.
do that. The
Wow.
SS would come in and like, are you going to support the Führer? And you're like, oh yeah, yeah. And they would like, shit, we're all going to die, you know?
Yep.
But behind their backs, they're like, Jesus, what are we going to do? This guy's a psychopath, right?
Right.
And there were the true believers as well. But the same exists in these countries. If you're 2 years old and you're getting tattooed with the MA and the SA or a trece or whatever, and you're growing up around that and you are taught this is what you're going to do until you become a member, right? That's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And so all the money and all the suspension, all that's you're never, oh, you're going to lock them up for 60. So anyone who ever does anything with a tattoo, you're just going to suspend their constitutional rights and throw them in prison. And you're going to keep them in prison. You're going to sustain 60, 70, 80,000 people in a SACOP prison in El Salvador without any kind of inspection of what they did. There should be some kind of inspection of what the evidence is and what they did. Not everyone's going to be 100% clear case. And I am not a bleeding heart. I'm not. But I think we need to have a judicial process that's fair and guaranteed for us in this country. I'm speaking about the United States of
Right.
America, called Constitution. We have a Bill of Rights, and we have to adhere to that. And that's
Right.
what I talk about in the book as
I,
well.
absolutely. Wow. And one of the things you mentioned again in the book is how gangs use social media. Could you kind of expound on that a little bit?
Yeah. So they're using, like, for example, we'll just take like Telegram, right? They'll use encrypted communication through some of these apps. TikTok, they'll get in a chat that's in TikTok, or they'll get on a thread and communicate in TikTok, whatever it might be, right? So encrypted communications changed the game. When I was an ASAC in Los Angeles before I retired, we had wire rooms that once had been full with 100 100 people working there. And now you might have 3 or 4 people working there because the technology changed where we can't just get up on telephone lines. Everything's encrypted.
Right.
So these gangs are communicating across international boundaries all over the world. You have MS-13 that might be in the United States, it might be in Honduras, might be in El Salvador, they might be in Madrid, Spain. And they're all communicating on these encrypted platforms, whatever that platform might be,
Oh, okay.
encrypted. They're gonna be working on that because they're smart enough to know that they could be intercepted if they're sloppy.
Now, how are they using social media to recruit people from the United States?
Well, just like you see the narcos in Mexico, right? The bling, the
Okay.
jewelry, the money, the women, all those things. And what they're looking for is that belonging aspect of, do you want to belong to something? Because they're really going toward a couple different people, one of which is someone that has nothing. They have no direction, they have no family, they have nothing, and they're
Okay.
growing up poor. And then they dangle this opportunity of like, if you come with us, you got a familia and you're going to have riches, and we're going to give you a life of fun and adventure. And that's where you
Okay.
have all the videos that come out with the gangs, and they're doing all the symbols and all that stuff. And they all do that. And that's one of the biggest, ways that they try to, garner support and new recruits.
I just don't understand how gullible people could be, but there's a sucker born every minute, right? I guess, what blows my mind is, I think about how Americans can become brainwashed. It takes me back to the Boston Marathon bombing. You had two radical um, Islamists, and one was married to an American woman that converted over, and she knew what they were going to do. That's what
Hmm.
just burned my ass. And it's like, we're talking about like blowing people's legs off. There's little kids. I mean, it's like, this is not a military target. You're not, these are a bunch of people, watching people jog for God's sakes. And you're going to produce this much havoc. And I don't think she cooperated and she really didn't get charged, but she knew exactly what was happening and just was silent.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see splinter groups coming off some of these gangs, and some of these small little, non-organic groups that split off of, for example, like you say, like some of these Latino small gangs that you might have in Wisconsin or you might have in Minnesota that aren't really part of, like, the Latin Kings, right? But they might be a splinter group of it. Same thing exists with the Tren de Aragua. And when you look at 18th Street Gang, it started out when you're talking about Mexican Americans, but then they opened up the books to everyone. Come on in, guys. You could be this, you could be that. So
Okay.
that's the same thing when you're looking at how these groups are pressured, right? And people are being arrested by the hundreds, right? They need new recruits, they need new members, and they're going to exploit whatever that has to be. And if it has to be, the little girl from, Chimichanga, Massachusetts, then and she shows an interest and they can get her, they're going to get her. And
Okay.
it doesn't take much to radicalize some people.
Man, it blows my mind how gullible and just stupid. I mean, there's no other word for it. Yeah, it's like, wow. And you also mentioned the rise of cryptocurrencies in
Yeah.
like criminal transactions. Can you kind of expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, let's look at what's happening in the world of crypto, right? So when you have cryptocurrency that, 20 years ago didn't exist, right? And now you have a way to move how much money you want to move, 20 million, 30 million, 50 million, 10,000, 200. You can move cryptocurrency through it doesn't, it could be Ethereum, it could be, look what they had in Venezuela. Look what they have in El Salvador. They're adapting to cryptocurrency in these countries. And when you have, for example, you might have a little what's called a cold wallet that could contain millions of dollars, and someone that's supposed to be enforcing the law, they don't know that money's coming through. You're not going to declare as
Right.
per law the $10,000 declarative, requirement for money coming in or going out of the U.S. You're not going to declare that. Why would you? You don't have to, because someone searches your stuff, they're going to grab that thing and that's for my camera. Oh, okay. They don't know. I mean, it makes it easy to move money. And when you're talking about Tren de Aragua, for the most part, you're not talking about a structured military element where the money is flowing perfectly and doing this and that. Okay. That's not the way they work. Okay. When you have guys like Hector Rutherford, who is the leader or the creator, in essence, of Tren de Aragua, who's wanted, probably hiding out, who knows, maybe in Peru, maybe in Panama, could be in Mexico. They're looking for him, right? He's the big bad apple they want to get a hold of. He does get his hands on money. But I think when you look within Venezuela, you're going to see high level government members, okay, that are getting money and they are doing favors for higher level people within the government. This is as much as I'll say about it. When they sent back 185 or 100 and some Venezuelan TDA members to Venezuela, do you remember the president, Nicolas Maduro, was there hugging them when they came off the plane? Go look at it on YouTube. You can see it.
Wow.
He's
How,
out
how,
there greeting
how
and hugging.
how long ago was that?
This was probably 6 months ago, five
My
months ago,
God.
maybe less, right? So what that tells me is, okay, it's a political move for the masses, right? Because remember, he's a socialistic
Right.
equality for all. These are all our brothers. But it's a higher symbolic element to this, I think. And some things I won't talk about is you have higher level individuals within the government that are enriching themselves, not only in direct receipt of funds for favors, but you have permissive environments, like, for example, with gold mining in Venezuela, or mining of coltan, which is an important mineral for satellite wings and things like that. You have all of these different things that are occurring there. We have Tren de Aragua has access and dominion over some of these things. How is that happening? Well, some of it might be hands-off approach. We're going to stay hands-off, but you have to, put a little bit of jingle in my jangle here in
Okay.
Corral.
Wow. I don't think the average American understands these gangs and what they are capable of. It's somewhere else. I think about the murder rates that you had in your book. Jamaica, Central America, 2000 to 2017, 2.5 million murders. Two-thirds of the world's murders happened there. I mean,
Yeah.
should we be worried this is going to spill into our country?
It already has. So for the last, for the last 30, 35, 40 years with the Mata Salvatrucha, you have homicides that are occurring in the United States. Then they head out in Central America, and that we talked about that before, where we have the phantasma, which is the ghost that just keeps going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, right? So we throw someone in jail or we throw them into another country. They continue to develop as a gang member. They get a new shtick. They come up, they commit crimes and kill. And one of the biggest elements of predictors of what could happen is looking at the history of the Maro Salvatrucha, the DSC8 and La M, which is a prison gang, which is basically the mothership of these Latino gangs. They control the dominion over the prisons. Okay. And that is why we saw such an aggressive approach with TDA, because we don't need another gang in the mix in the jails. We don't need another integration of a strong gang into the jails, because all that does is it just creates this fervor within these gladiator academies, I call them, because they're
Right.
gladiator. It just creates more danger, more problems, more issues, and more money. And that's why we saw such a hammer coming out. Because some are like, this is a little bit much, isn't it? That we're going after this gang. How bad is this gang? Well, let me tell you something. They're killing people all over the world. Okay. Western Hemisphere, South America, they are spreading like a virus that's out of control. And not only are they in the country and spreading like a virus, but they're going to get into our institutional system. And once they're in the institutional system and they're outside the system and they're flowing back and forth, it's just going to be like our history with the other Latino gangs. And I talk about that in the book. And that's why it was so important that they go and they tactically just precisely grab all these individuals and throw them out of the country.
Interesting. Yeah, not to get too political, but I remember working with ICE when Obama was president. And, we weren't going after cooks or gardeners. We
Mm,
were going after gangbangers. We were going after gangsters, at 2 o'clock in the morning where they were on, like Haida's radar or whoever's, radar. And it's like, they call for uniforms to help them out. And we were pulling people out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning on the regular in Milwaukee. It got
mhm,
so much that they had to build a new building to house these people. You know,
mhm.
it- but again, politics is politics. And, they're ready to canonize him as a saint. And, Trump is doing it and they're ready to, the pitchforks and torches are coming out. Yeah, and I know presentation and optics is everything, not reality. And it's very frustrating to me to see it happen.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Many of these people that are so critical have never been victimized or seen victims. And being in law enforcement like you and I have been, and others in the first responder realm, or in schools, or in hospitals, or in other social types of employment, have seen this firsthand. Because it's not just cops. People that work in these environments with
Right.
exposure across the plains, across the views of everything, see what's going on. And it's the political acumen in a sense that says to all these politicians, they're like, oh, we want it because they're trying to appease the masses.
Yes.
For example, you have Chuck Schumer, who is kind of supporting the Palestinians that are supporting Hamas, and he's Jewish.
I know.
And you're like, because he is favoring party over maybe what should be an altruism and his, right and wrong and so forth, right? And there's no question that Hamas is a terrorist organization, but you're going to support the same vein of what Hamas stands upon. I mean, you're not going to take a stance on that because of the politics involved. I just, that's where we're at right now. So when I look at it in that perspective, I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna keep doing what I do. I'm not worried about the others because I'm never gonna change that kind of person's mind.
Yeah, we're so entrenched in Democrat slash Republican instead of seeing what's best for the country. At least in my eyes, that's what I'm seeing. It's like, well, if Trump is for this, I'm automatically against it, no matter what it is or how good it could be for somebody. And, transversely too, it's like, you know what, if the Democrats are for this, well, I'm just going to dig in my heels and I won't even look at it. And that's so narrow-minded, and it will be the demise, I think, of our way of life, more or less. I mean, I don't know. It just drives me crazy.
Well, listen, having we talked about my auto accident. I've seen a lot of violence in my life, a lot of dead victims, a lot of maimed victims, children, men,
Yep.
women, uh, all over the country, different parts of the world. I've seen slaves that were Chinese captured slaves, in essence, that were all housed in boats and brought over to be forced labor and everything from women smuggling women, organ smuggling, and I've seen so much in my life. And then to become a victim of a career criminal that had over 300 alias names, the guy that hit me, the drunk driver. Okay. Let me tell you what happened to him in case your viewers want to know. So I'm in the hospital. I'm out of it. I'm going through everything I'm going through to try to recover and live and survive and walk. He gets out on bond. He'd used an alias name. Okay. They didn't run it through Avis. They didn't run the fingerprint system. They didn't run his stuff through fingerprint
Wow.
system. And he's out free. He runs around. He absconds for 23 years. Okay. So a couple years after I retire, 3 or 4 years after I retire, I get a phone call. Hey, this is a prosecutor from whatever, Minnesota courts. And, we got this guy. He kind of popped up on the radar. He said it's not him, but the prints come back, it's him. You ever want to follow up on that case? Are you interested in prosecuting this guy? It was a long time.
Yeah. Yes, I am.
I'm like, yeah, I am actually. Yeah, I do want to prosecute him. He goes, well, the prints and this and that. And of course, you know, luckily for us, we know exactly what to do and how to do it and all these things. And he starts vacillating on how it's tough to make the case. And I just fucking lay over him like a steamroller. Like, this is what you need to do, like this. And he's just like, oh shit, you know. You want to argue with me, pal? I will cream you. I know exactly what I'm doing. And you're just trying to get out of doing a prosecution.
Yep.
So come to find out, he goes, well, listen, he's in Atlanta and we don't really have anyone to do it. Can you maybe try to arrange for him to get picked up?
You, the victim.
I'm the victim. Yeah,
Wow.
sure, no problem. I call the state police. I tell him, I said, the guy's in Georgia. Can you contact Georgia authority? He goes, I just want you to know this is the state police that I started an interest with law enforcement,
Yeah.
Minnesota State Police. We would do this for anyone, not just because you were a retired agent and a police officer. We want you to understand that we would make this phone call for anyone. And he starts like, I was like, you pussy. That's all I could say. Didn't say that on YouTube. But I was like, this guy, I was shocked, man. I'm like, you can bleep that out. I was just like, how incredible is this, right? So they ended up calling someone down in Atlanta, right, or the county or whatever. They pick him up. We go to court. He had, unbeknownst to me, he had pled guilty at the time of his initial appearance
Okay.
and agreed to 6 months probation.
Oh, for almost
Okay.
killing you. Oh,
For
God.
almost killing me. I didn't know this, right? I didn't know this. So, but because he absconded, I never got really notified.
Yeah.
Wasn't even notified he absconded, which by law, as a victim, I should have been notified, right?
Right.
I was never notified. So he takes off. He actually goes to jail and prison a couple times while he's out.
And nobody caught
Okay.
this?
No one caught it. All right.
Wow.
So when he's brought to court, victim witness calls me and they're like, you want to come? I'm like, yeah. They said, well, you need a victim witness statement. Sure. Give you a victim witness statement. So I go up and I said, you know what? I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to be like forgiveness and kind of get this off and just let it go, right? Do I like the guy? Whatever. But I'm going to do the right thing. I always try to do the right thing in my life. Always have. So I tell him, I said, you know, I forgive you, man. Whatever, but in this case, I'd love to see you get your life on track. We have enough people that are messed up, you know. And I wish there was something I could do to help you. He goes, that'd be great, man. I love it. Oh, whatever. So then he says, his turn to talk. If you would have been tailgating me, this never would have.
Oh, shoot.
So it's better. It's better. It couldn't get any better. So I was like, tailgating, you hit me in behind doing 100. What are you talking about? So I go to the president. I go, what the hell is he talking? He goes, oh, that was another crash. He had another DUI crash or
Oh, so, he's mixing them up. He's been in so many. Oh, shit.
something. I'm like, so then the judge, I'm sitting at the table with the prosecutors,
Yeah.
which, I guess as a victim, typically I don't know if they do that or not, but as a DEA agent, we always sat with the prosecutor at the
Right, right,
table.
right, right.
So
Yeah.
the judge, you earned the right to sit here. I'm like, earned it, right? Whatever. So then she said, I am going to accept the plea that he provided. The prosecutor's objection, Your Honor. He used a fake identity. He
Right.
pled guilty under a fake identity.
Oh, jeez.
The PSI was used under a fake identity. So the pretrial services does a calculation for those that don't know. They do a calculation of how many crimes you've committed, and they have a score, and it goes your sentencing time goes by your score. Well, he used a fake name, so the score was whatever, nothing, right?
Right.
Well, fast forward 23 years, he has all these other arrests on his record. They wouldn't let me look at the PSI, which pissed me off. I'm gonna get
Right.
my hand on that PSI eventually for my next book we'll talk about real quick. So I'm just like flabbergasted. And he's like, How can he plead guilty when he gave a fake name? I'm thinking, why isn't he charged under additional
Oh,
charges?
yeah, there should be
He should have got a
obstruction. There
fake
should be
charge for
bail
flight to
jumping.
avoid prosecution.
Yeah, there should be bail jumping. There should be obstruction. There's,
Nothing. Judge is like, he's had such a hard time in life, 6 months probation. I was like, Jesus, you gotta be kidding me. Yeah,
wow.
yeah. And there's some more to it, but I'm not gonna
Well,
get into
and that boils down to I'm going to bet that judge has never been the victim of a crime. I'm,
like
you
35
just,
year old judge, yeah, political appoint not political appointee, but I mean
yeah,
she she's
dealing with people on the street, it's like, okay, you would see the people who are actually victims of crimes that weren't shitbags, that weren't criminals themselves.
right.
And you wanted to go that extra mile for them. You always wanted to help them out. And then as cops, that's a different layer because it's like, yeah, we see all the ugly. We go through it with the victims, but then we get to go home and have like kind of a normal life, as
Right.
normal as you could be. But I remember before I was a cop, my house was I was living in a townhouse, barely had two pennies to rub together, newly married, and I go down I go down to Chicago to see the folks with my new bride, and we come back. It's like the Grinch came and stole Christmas. Our place is burglarized we took our wedding money and bought a TV. We bought a stereo. We didn't have anything. They took everything. And I'll never, ever, ever forget that feeling. I was so pissed. So that's whenever I went to a burglary because in in the scheme of things, burglary, not that big of a crime compared to shooting and killing people and stabbing people and the violent crimes. This is technically a non-violent crime and we don't put a ton of resources into it. We just don't.
Mhm.
But you know what? Whenever I went to one, I always flash back and it's like I've got empathy for you because I know how this feels now.
Yeah. And that's why when I talk about, like, you can see when I write, I am very firm in how I view what our constitutional rights should be preserved, why we shouldn't change, why we should not have this knee-jerk reaction to erase or pause or pronounce a different way of life for ourselves based on victims or what victims went through. It's very important. I'm a victim. Every day I wake up, I'm in pain. My neck hurts every day.
Sure.
Right as we're sitting here, I'm in pain. My right arm is numb all the time, except for I can feel the inside of my hand. I can't feel anything else. But I have full use. I mean, I can still punch, kick, I can run, I can do everything.
Yeah.
I've fully recovered. I have a lot of pain. I live with it every day. I'm a victim. I almost died. What he put me through was a lot. No amount of pain or victimization will ever change my view in what our constitutional steadfastness should be for this country and why our founding fathers did it that way, why all the principles that we have, the Blackstone principles coming from England, on what our jurisprudence is and all the protections that they afford us should not be changed because of victims. I'm a victim. Put my money where my mouth is. And we have to find ways if we need to tighten up on what's happening, we need further or more damning sentences for these people, then get into Congress and change the laws.
Well, yeah, I
Do
mean,
what you need.
it's very simple, but people don't want to go through it because there's going to be a pain point. It's
Mhm.
like, ooh, gun control. All right, we need common sense gun laws. There's a zillion gun laws out there that aren't enforced. Or, as a cop, you would arrest somebody with a pistol and they get 6 months probation. They get a year probation. Okay, I just shot you, but you lived. Okay, you might spend a year in prison, maybe. Now, if I'll illustrate it this way. I was in Belfast, Ireland in 2019. I go visit. I call a buddy of mine up that used to live in America. Hey, let's go for a pint, Liam. Yeah, sounds good. I'll pick you up. He picks me up, and we go to a pub. He orders half a Guinness. I'm like, Liam, something wrong with you? He says, oh, you don't understand. He says, if I get busted for drunk driving, I lose my van, and I need my van to work. I was,
Oh,
what do you mean you lose your van? He says, they'll take your car. There is no effing around with drunk drivers. And you know what? Like I said, there'd be a pain point if you say, okay, you catch somebody toting a pistol at 2 o'clock in the morning that doesn't have a CCW and is it has a record longer than my arm, 10 years. Bye. See ya.
yeah.
That would
Minimum
change
mandatory,
everything.
make them firm like they did back, with the narcotics. When you look back at the methamphetamine scourge, Congress enacted the 5 grams, 50 grams, second conviction, all those things, doubling the sentence time, 10 years, 20 years, 30. I mean, to stop it. If you want to do that, do that. Don't take away people's rights and say, well, it was necessitated because the crime's so bad we had to do something with it. No, no, no. I don't agree
Yeah,
with
I
that.
mean, there's simple solutions to our problems, but they're very painful solutions, especially at first. Yeah, will prisons be overrun? Hell yes. Yeah, you think it's bad now, kids. Holy shit. But you reach like an apex to it and then it will mellow. But
Yeah.
nobody wants to go through that pain point. No politician is ever going to raise their hand and say, "Yeah, this sounds like a good idea." I don't care who you are.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's, but you know what? Let's talk about your book, Infiltrate America, Blood Routes and the Rise of Latin American Gangs.
There we
There it
go.
is. Why did you write it?
For me, it was a passion project. It was something, I was getting called on to do a lot of interviews in Fox and Newsmax and different newspapers. And that's kind of my hobby to do media commentary and things like that. But living, operating, arresting, creating all the things I did with these gangs. And I don't consider myself an expert whatsoever. Not at all. I've actually been asked that before. You're a SMA, and not really.
Well, you know more than the average bear. Let's just say that.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I say, right? I shy away from saying expert, but it's something that I'm very, very not only curious about after all these years, but very involved in still. I'm always studying and reading and all these things. So I said, most people in the country, they don't know like about these gangs. If you're outside of law enforcement or the scope of where these gangs live or are or whatever, you don't know. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm gonna write a damn book about it. And because I have another book I'm writing called Beyond Blurry Lines, which is kind of like a memoir that kind of chronicles a lot of the stuff we talked about today, but a lot more of it, and how I recovered from paralysis and things. But I said I want to write this book so that I have something that people can read and kind of understand what these gangs are about, why they're coming here, what's the history, and more importantly, what can we do to change some of this, and what can we do to maybe not really affect the other countries, but in a sense, we're all in this together. We hear this all the time, right? So all the money we pump into a variety of these programs, but how much are we pumping into programs to help these kids in these cities in our country, whether it be in Chicago, whether it's part of a black gang, a Latino gang, an Asian gang in the Northwest, what's happening in the East Coast? What are we doing with some of these other spin-off gangs with TDA? What are we doing with these prisons, with these guys that are in prison, not the ones that actually can be saved, maybe not the lifers, maybe not the homicidal maniacs that are killing people in jail and they're getting out, killing again and going back. But what can we do to the ones that we can save? And that's why I wrote this book, you know. So
Well, in Milwaukee, and I'm sure other large cities too, what we're doing is ignoring it and pretending it's not there. And if you pretend it's not there, it's like we used to have we call it VCD, Vice Control Division. They would go after street level narcotics stuff and prostitution, gambling, but most of it was dope. Well, the chief woke up one morning and was like, you know what? I'm disbanding it. That way we don't have a drug problem. So your drug arrests go down in the toilet. Oh, look, there's no drug problem
yeah,
because nobody's going after them. Same thing. We had a gang squad that was aggressively going after the gangs that we had in the city. Another chief wakes up one morning. Yeah, you know what? That gang squad? No. And then it
yeah,
was like, well, we'll let the district, this should be done at the district level. Then this new chief that we have, is like, we're just disbanding the district level as well. Just go take your 911 assignments and make TikTok videos and, some dancing videos. We have a free ice cream truck. We have, it's beyond ridiculous. So it's like, oh yeah, we're not arresting gangbangers anymore because
Let's
there's
create
no
a
gangs.
perception rather than show the reality.
Correct. And meanwhile, crime is exploding. People are dying left and right. But it's those people in those neighborhoods, so nobody cares until it starts spilling over into, oh shit, that's my neighborhood.
And the police athletic leagues around the country, you know, it's not as prevalent as it was. But let me tell you something. The police athletic leagues, you hear some of the stars, the old school stars and different sports players of notoriety talk about police athletic league, how it's helped save them. And when you look at, I could have gone either way. I could have been a criminal. I could have been a
Yeah.
truck driver. I was kind of turned away from the Boy Scouts, turned away from sports, or turned away from this or that. But then when I went to, the state police in Minnesota Explorer program, they welcomed me with open arms. And that changed the whole direction of my life. And I think we need more of that, not just NGOs, but we need government as well. And I'm not talking the socialistic kind of like, let's just pump money into psychologists and social workers to come in the community. Cops, you wait out here. We're going to go in there and social work
Yeah,
this.
no,
That's
that's
not what I'm talking about.
no.
What I'm talking about, how can we spark and make opportunities in this country instead of just dumping millions and millions and millions of dollars in incarceration? What can we do to try to find a better balance in that?
Yeah, no, I'm on board with you 100%. So, writing this book, was it painful for you? You did it bring back some bad memories?
Uh, you know, not really. It when I've been through a lot and I've seen a lot, just like you have and many other people have. And it's really not while I'm in the crux of writing or researching, because surprisingly enough, if you haven't looked at the bibliography in this thing,
Oh, I did. Yeah.
I was like, Jesus. I mean, I was footnoting like it's a lot.
Yeah, you put
And
a lot of
for a
work
little
into that,
book, because
obviously.
I think it's a pretty easy read. You tell me. I mean,
Yeah, I think it was.
170 pages, right?
Yeah, it wasn't bad at
Appendix with
all.
the appendix. It's not too crazy, but my point is, I'm kind of like, hey, there he is.
There's Clark.
I'm kind of like, as I'm writing and researching, I would have moments of like, I remember this face or this person or this death or whatever.
Yeah.
And uh, when I finished, and I remember one night I'm not like sitting there for hours going over whatever it might be or reading or
Right.
whatever. I remember I was just sitting there just kind of like on just thinking. I couldn't just stop thinking. But it's not just exclusive to the book. It's like every cop. You always, especially when you're retired,
Yes.
you think about all those lives that you've seen impacted in all these things. So it was a source of a lot of pensive time that I spent, before and after. But during, really, it wasn't during, it was more like after and before. Like, why do I want to do this book? Because surprisingly enough, it could take 10 months to do a small book like this. It could take you almost a year,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yes.
Working a lot on
Yep.
it. Surprisingly, people don't realize that, right? So I was more focused on, and you're like me too. I mean, you've authored a bunch of books. You're like, once you get your hooks in it, you're like, I'm gonna get this freaking done. I am gonna get this done.
Yeah.
I got a deadline. I'm gonna, and you just become so consumed. It's not until after everything's done and you've done your like 50th edit or 70th edit, and you're like, I need to read it again. When that's all done and the dust settles, that's when you're like going, holy shit. I remember this or that or
Yeah, for me, I've written a bunch of books and a lot of it is based on, the things that have happened to me in 25 years. And I would wake up just screaming. I had nightmares like you wouldn't. My wife and Clark here were not very happy about me
Yeah.
doing this, because I was literally waking up in a cold sweat. And people don't realize it's like and it affects everybody differently. Everybody's different. I get that. But and sometimes it just happens when you least expect it. And you're like, "Holy shit." Okay. So yeah, and I'm glad you wrote the book. Like you said, it's easily digestible. It's a good book. I enjoyed it. I went through it pretty quick actually, and I'm a slow reader, so that's good. So, what do you want people to learn or have a feeling, or what feeling do you want them to have when you're done reading your book?
You know, if you're a police officer and you have a knowledge of these gangs, obviously this is not a comprehensive deep dive into gangs. What this was meant for is to give, could be a police officer has, that's sitting somewhere in Wichita that doesn't have any gangs, right? They're like, oh, I want to take a look at this a little bit more from
Yeah.
a cop look at it. Or just, someone that's in college that's doing something on gangs or social work or something like that. Let me look at this. So there's a little bit of something for anyone for in pretty much any kind of book genre, right? So I wrote this for everyone, not just,
Okay.
just for police officers by any means, right? So, but the biggest thing I want them to take away is, and all of this book is understanding how these problems have developed and festered and continue, what we've done in the past to try to interrupt and cease and try to change direction. Where have we failed in all that? And what can we do? What can the next generation do to try to look for an implementation of something that's going to change the direction of what the hell's going on? Because I don't think we're doing that right now.
Yeah.
And until we try to find some more balance in how we try to get our youth on the right track, and I'm not just talking throwing money at the problem, because that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people like back in the day with the Police Athletic League or back in the day with the Explorers program, whatever program it might be, that they invest their time and their mentorship to hitch to someone's wagon to help them come up. Because you could throw all the money in the world at something, it's not going to help. We have to have human actual interaction, and it's valuable time that people are giving to these programs. And how do we do that? you know, Big Brothers and Sisters, right? Great program. It's a fantastic program. Still going today. Huge program because we have, in some communities, you might have a 53%, rate without fathers in the homes,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. More than that.
Huge,
Where I
right?
worked, it was
So,
about 75%.
I mean, yeah, that's outrageous.
Yep.
How can you expect a child to have the best odds of success when he's already at that deficit? I'm not
Right.
saying it can't happen. I'm not saying it won't happen, but we want to give these kids the best odds that they can. And we're failing right now in education. We're failing right now in mentorship. We're failing on several levels within these communities. And that's all ties into how do we stop and try to either halt or redirect some of if we get 10, 15, 20% that we can redirect to do the right thing, to be the right citizen in the end, we're all going to benefit from it. So how
Yeah.
do we do? And that's probably the biggest factor. And that, paired with don't take away our rights to try to protect the victims or the potential victims in our country.
Yep. All right. Post retirement from the DA. What do you miss the most or least about being a cop?
I was a cop my whole life since I was 18, 19, 20, whatever. And I think you miss the camaraderie. You hear a lot of guys talk about, they're not part of a tribe anymore. You need a
Yeah.
tribe. So I had a guy tell me, one of the SEALs that I knew, SEAL Team 6 guy that I knew, he had retired. And he's like, you got to be part of a tribe, man. You got to find your tribe. And I'm like, shit, how do I find a tribe? So, and then I had gone back. I was a lieutenant for the Seminole Police with Hard Rock, and then I was a state detective, and I worked the private sector. I was a global a director for Spanish world leading company, actually, that we were all over the map. I was heading up a very special unit that they had, executive protection, intelligence analytics, and I did that for about a year. And now I'm doing consulting writing my next book, which will be out next year, called Beyond Blurry Lines. And then I do media consulting and commentary and things like that. So I'm trying to put myself into, I'm 55 years old, so I'm still feel kind of young,
You are.
uh,
Yep.
getting older. I just want to try to make a difference in something. And I kind of found maybe the opportunity to do that as long as I can have that intrinsic kind of factor that's going to be saying you are doing something. Because I could be making money or doing something successful and really not feel like I'm doing anything that's benefiting myself, right? So
Right.
I all these years of service that I've sacrificed sacrificed so much in my life. Now it's time for me to try to still do something I feel good about and still maybe protect people, maybe writing and commentary, but I have to feel like it's something that's enriching my life as well. I really feel that's critically important for me.
Excellent. All right. I think that's a good place for us to end here. Where can people go to find out more about you and your book?
Sure. They can go to infiltrateamerica.com, infiltrateamerica.com, the name of the book. And you just go on there. And if anyone ever needs to contact me, there's a contact point there. You can put a comment and it'll come to me. And
You have a website, right?
yeah, that's infiltrateamerica.com is the
Okay.
website. I have another one that's going to be coming out shortly. It's actually running, but it's not live per se.
Okay.
So that'll be coming out soon. But like I said, I'll be writing a few more books before this is all said and done. So my next one will be out, like I said, hopefully next summer. It's pretty much written. I'm just kind of giving a good massage and flowering up. And I think that'll be out probably next August. And that's more of the details of my life and how I grew up from the time I was young, very poor, living in a bus, bathing in the lake. We had no
Oh,
money whatsoever to where, I got paralyzed, recovered, and then continued my law enforcement career and so forth. So I think it'll be an interesting book for a lot of different people to read, not just cop enthusiasts.
sounds good. Well, this has been a great conversation. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's been wonderful. It was great.